Alright, hello everyone. This is the English Speedrun Restreams English language restream of RTA in Japan Winter 2025. I am Sawayoshi and I'll be your host for the next few hours of this event as it's heading into its final couple of days. Next up is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters for Battle of Great Duelists Any %. This is going to be a race. And because I don't know anything about this game, we do have a commentator here to help us learn a bit more about it. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Magus1. This is Magus, or Mage for short. And I'll be providing commentary for this one. As of note all, you're actually getting someone that has played this game, or at least one of the games that is similar to it, as this builds a lot from some of the old actual DM games. In short, this would be the fourth of those games overall. It was also the one that had the very first attempt at Konami trying to do something similar to Pokemon, with having 3 separate games. One for Yugi, one for Joey, and one for Kaiba. Which, depending on the version they will be playing on that one, it doesn't really change as much, it just depends on their opening decks.
It does look like there's currently a bid war. There's a couple bid wars with one of them being what deck we'll be using. Looks like right now the top options, and they're going to be using the top 2 options, are Yugi and Kaiba.
Okay, that means one will be playing Yugi, one will be playing Kaiba, which is interesting since the leaderboards do actually separate via version.
There also does seem to be an incentive which has been met for using each of their partner cards. I don't know if that's a terminology for it, but
probably what that is Blue Eyes and Dark Magician, I'm guessing, on that one there.
Yep, that does look to be the case. As we're waiting for this run to get started, have you actually been watching this event at all? And if so, what runs have you seen so far that you've liked?
I have sadly not, because I work retail in this time of year, if you can imagine.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I'm just happy to be able to go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. Chat. Do you have any runs that you've enjoyed from this event? Because there's been quite a few. If you want to get a quick recap on what has been shown, exclamation mark schedule will give you an English schedule for everything that's happened, as will exclamation mark VODs, which will refer you to the VODs channel that we've been uploading to.
I will say, for 4, Duel Monsters 4 is an interesting game on that one. I have not played all of it, but I did skim through the instruction book. Just a quick, figure out, like, okay, what are the differences between it and one of the other games that I do speedrun. But I'll probably get into that at some point in the run if there's nothing really much going on action-wise. Sadly, I was not able to get a list of what passwords they will be using for their decks, but it's going to be an interesting race since both of the runners are the first and second place people on the leaderboards, and the times are pretty competitive. And considering the style of run it is, there's a reason that there's a 30-minute estimate. Well, 25-minute estimate between their PBs and their final times in a marathon sense, because you can only play with the cards the games give you, and this is unlike some of the later games where you can manipulate things to some degree. It still only gives you one card, for winning, and it also has the deck capacity system from stuff like Dark Duel Stories all the way up through Receptive Destruction, which was Duel Monsters 8. So not only are you limited in what cards you can get, and actually I should save some of this stuff before the run starts. I don't know how far I'm going to go on the VODs, and I think more people would care to know this.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do see people in chat mentioning they had a Smash with Smash TV. That's one of the runs that I actually have not been able to watch. So maybe I'll have to watch the VOD for that after this.
I know I did pass along info, and I wish that they could have gotten someone for the Contra run, because I do know a few of the people that are, I'm familiar with at least one of the people that is going to be on the couch for that when it's going to appear in HGQ later, but too early for them, I think.
Mm-hmm. It is unfortunate some of the times in the West for these runs.
Yeah, I know, but at the same point, I'm happy to support this one because it's rare for one of the non, quote-unquote big Yu-Gi-Oh runs to see itself in a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually only the Forbidden Memories, Duelists of the Roses, or Falsebound Kingdom, or ones like those to be shown off. However, there has been a strong resurgence of some of the older games thanks to the Early Days collection. I actually highly do recommend checking that one out, as it was Konami's attempt at bringing 14 of the old games, to a modern system. Thank you, Digital Eclipse, for even keeping it some of the more broken glitches. Although I will note, it not only has 14 games on that one, it also has the subsequent versions of, each of the individual differences between all the different versions, like Duel Monsters 5, which is actually a very big difference versus it and the game we got with Eternal Duelist Soul, which was a sort of remake of that one, so you technically have 15 there. And a lot of other little things. I will note that our runners will be playing on the Early Days collection. And ironically, it will be a battle between PC and the Switch.
Mm.
Apparently, chat also did the Diddy Kong Racing run.
Yeah, Diddy Kong Racing, another one that I was not able to catch, but I know those runners are very passionate about their craft, and as was the commentator that we had for the English restream, so I will have to check that one out as well.
I'm just passionate about, seeing some of the older Yu-Gi-Oh games being run because there's a lot of skill that is actually involved in them. As you still have to play the games, and unlike something like your typical game like Forbidden Memories, where it's just slap two things together to form two-headed Thunder Dragon, dump a lot of equipment on, and then just attack for game, where you can actually churn for your deck. The later ones, you really don't have that, so it does actually add a lot more complexity to things. And especially when you have to start deck building and other stuff. Some of that later on.
Mm-hmm. It does look like there's a bit more time before the run starts, so as a reminder, everyone, this is English Speedrun Restreams English language restream of RTA in Japan Winter 2025, the winter edition of Japan's largest speedrun event, running twice a year. The winter event runs a week long from December 25th to December 31st. We are reaching the end of that event very, very quickly. Less than 24 hours left in the event. RTA in Japan is also a charity event raising money for Doctors Without Borders or Médecins Sans Frontières. MSF provides medical assistance to people around the world affected by conflict, epidemics, disasters, or exclusion from healthcare. If you want to learn more, you can go to their website, which is at, I believe, msf.org. And if you want to donate to a great cause, ! Donate in chat will give you a direct link to the RT in Japan donation site to do so. And it looks like our direct donations are getting pretty high up there. It's almost at, I think we might hit 8 million yen during this run, and that would be absolutely amazing. I think we can do it.
Also, someone in chat wanting to know where they can find the VODs channel.
Yes, I did mention this earlier as well. The VODs channel can be found on. It's in our bio. And you also have the ability to use the !YT command or the !VODs command to get a link to that. We've been uploading videos as the event goes on, so if you've missed anything, then you can catch up with our YouTube.
But I'm just happy that they have a lot of stuff for the. I'm just happy that you're getting to see a lot more. I won't say Forbidden Memories isn't fun and an interesting one. Same thing with Duelist of the Roses. But I'm glad that more of the actual ones based on the actual card game, which thank you, Kazuki Takahashi, for coming up with that game on that one, because I know a lot of us have played it. Something I will probably get into talking about later in the run is that how much the creator, God rest his soul, actually loved tabletop RPGs and stuff like that. So that's why you see a lot of that in those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just gotta love people messing around with the camera.
Yeah, it's fun. Everyone has their little plushies and they're playing around.
I remember watching being on comms for the Gundam run earlier in the year and seeing how the passionate of the runner actually even dressing up as Armoro.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly enough, you tend to speedrun and enjoy a lot of different types of games. Which in this instance, Yu-Gi-Oh! Being one of those I'm personally passionate about just because of growing up with, well, I won't say growing up because I was a teen when a lot of this stuff came out, and I remember playing, having fun and playing it, playing those types of stuff with friends in college. Yes, I'm dating myself there, but
Mm-hmm.
Even still, like, the TCG itself is one of those things that, like, there's an argument as to whether or not it would have continued on if it wasn't for something like Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, but at the same point, thank you, Little Karibo, for actually helping to keep the spirit up of that one. And then thanks Duel Links for helping get more people back in. But then again, that's a whole different thing on that one because of the gacha system there, but I don't play that one, but essentially, that gives it to an argument of whether or not some of the stuff has changed or not in things. Guess how we just switch up and set up PC and the consoles is what's the hold up, but that's just my guess. That or they finished very, very early and tried to slow down the stream. I do have to say, watching the RTA in Japan's, actual, stream thing on this one, it's a lot more QT in between run stuff than GDQ.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess
a
the
lot
positive. Go
a
ahead.
lot of events in the West just have the break screens with the schedule and the crowd cam. This is similar in that regard, but it does have the animation, but kind of as a trade-off, they don't have any hosting going on in Japanese marathons. Because if you've noticed, there's been zero talking on the break screen on the mainstream. All of that has been on the English Restream side.
I guess it is one of those interesting things on that one there, but I can also understand why they hold off on it, because I believe they usually, at least as far as what I can remember, for sporting events, and by sporting events I mean like hearing what most people talk about when they, when it comes to things like stuff like Smash Brothers and stuff like that, the emphasis is a lot more on the action that usually give people quiet, let them think, and all that stuff like that. And you usually don't see those celebratory pop-offs once something happens or once things are done.
Mm-hmm. Certainly an interesting little cultural quirk that plays itself very nicely in this regard.
Yes, it does. Just like how, and I will probably, fun fact on that one, I believe most of their actual OCG tournaments are best of 1 instead of best of 3.
Hmm.
And although it's unconfirmed whether or not it actually did exist or not, considering the history of the card game, I believe at one point you were not allowed to concede a game. It's been unconfirmed or not, like ages back, because of how little like early Yu-Gi-Oh history is. But that's why Victory Dragon actually was a win condition at some point. Victory Dragon being the only legal version of a card that could let you win a match by having it be the thing that kills your opponent in tournaments.
Huh.
It's one of those cards that is banned in the real TCG, because you can imagine just the whole, how much it could affect tournaments and the whole sort of like craziness of that. Although ironically, it is also, its effect is what's usually given out on the prize cards for making, I believe it's the top 4 of Worlds every year, which are not legal in duels.
Yeah, I'm just thinking right now. It's very rare that card games like that just have a win button card that is legal in tournament play, and for a very, very sensible reason.
I mean, all win conditions do exist in a lot of different card games, with Pokemon being the one that I believe has the least amount.
Mm-hmm.
They've had their fair share of them, but not as many as Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering.
Magic the Gathering, I thought, was mainly a thing in the West for a while, but then I found out out that it is a thing in Japan, like a pretty big.
Huge.
There's a
It is a huge scene for Magic the Gathering over there. It is pretty. It is a very huge thing on that one, and this is coming as someone who also plays Magic the Gathering. Yeah, it is a very big card game over there.
Mm-hmm.
With some of the former world champions in that one being from Japan.
Interesting.
They love their Magic the Gathering to the point of there's an entire line of card shops that is nationwide in Japan that are known for just being for Magic the Gathering more than any other card game.
Specifically for the Magic cards.
Harururi is, I believe, the card shop, which has got shops like everywhere in Japan on that one. And yeah, their main focus at the start was Magic the Gathering. So yes, card games are. This is one of the reasons why Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually became popular, was because they liked the card game. And in fact, the very first name for Duel Monsters was, I believe it was Magic and Wizards, or Wizards and Magic. Which is why if you ever go back and watch Season 0, aka the very first attempt at the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, which was done by Toei, that's what is on the back of the cards.
Oh.
Highly, highly, highly recommend if you have never seen some of the stuff from the fan name for it is Season 0. Go watch it. It's an adaptation of like some of the first volumes of the manga. And for those that have never read the original manga, highly recommend looking at it, because what we got here in the West with 4Kids and even with the second anime adaptation of it, that is a lot more censored than you would think coming from the manga.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just talking about invisible guns. I'm talking about like some of the ways that the actual penalty games for the for actually losing a Shadow game / something like that, or Yamino game, pretty disturbing. Like Bandit Key, for example, one of the I don't know if you've ever seen the anime.
I've seen a bit of it.
Bandit Key, the guy who is from America, like, the person with the machine deck from Duelist Kingdom. Manga-wise, he does not make it to Battle City. And it is sad exactly what happens to him. Let's just say, and I'll put it nicely, and this is in the manga, Pegasus does something with him as a penalty game for trying to, get him to actually do stuff, to where, let's just say, Russian roulette, and the gun was his own hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it is depicted in the manga of that.
Interesting.
So, yeah, like the original manga actually does get to be a bit darker, to the point of some of it you could even make a case for some of it is even more horror.
Mm-hmm. I do see people in chat mentioning some similar situations. I do also see people mentioning that they didn't know that Magic was was this big in Japan.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It's considered the granddaddy of all trading card games for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But nah, like this run should be an interesting run to watch. Since I won't go into all the gameplay mechanics for the differences between it and the TCG, but it will be an interesting run to watch. If you're a fan of of players having to actually think on the fly for that kind of stuff. Since unlike Forbidden Memories, you can't just go, okay, I can empty out my hand, draw 5 more cards, empty out my hand, draw 5 more cards. Nah, you'd only get 1 card each turn.
Yeah. Hey, is it all right if I give an incentive update?
Feel free, as we're just waiting around.
With the bid war with the deck bid war, there's been some movement there. Yugi is still solidly in the lead at 71,250 yen, but now in second place is Joey with 50,810 yen, and Kaiba falling behind at 46,809. So we might be seeing a different deck here.
Yugi and Jonochi, just to give his proper Japanese name.
Yes.
And they will be most likely using the Japanese version of Battle of Great Duelists, although shout out again to the Early Days collection, as it was also one of the games that was translated for the first time into multiple languages. in it.
Mm-hmm.
Highly, highly, highly. If you can find that one on Steam and you don't mind playing through some of the older games, being a bit slower, it's definitely worth it for the amount of games on there. Sadly, no Forbidden Memories and Duelists of the Roses, but you figure Konami went with the we can package a lot of this stuff together, and if it sells well type approach, most likely.
Mm-hmm. Gotta love games with official translations.
Hey, the whole reason why I actually started speedrunning Yu-Gi-Oh! Was because I wanted to try to root the one RPG that we never got over there, that was in there with Capsule Monsters GB, which is legitimately a tabletop strategy RPG based off the the little capsule monster things, and it is essentially like you play the capsule monster chess. It's strategy RPG. Level up your monsters and stuff like that, and then during the sections where you're fighting the bosses, you're actually having to traverse an actual overworld on that one with D&D style rolls and everything else like that. Similar to the last arc, the arc prior to the start of Duelist Kingdom, and also similar to what happens at the very end of the manga. But now, the manga is actually very interesting on that one there, and part of the reason why it was changed over to caring about the cards was because it was one of those like this looks amazing, and that sort of just got people's idea of like we want to play this, and then being smart enough to note that we might want to make something of this, and this is probably going to be more popular.
I mean, there's always a business part of, hey, if we make this, it's gonna make money. But that said, it's popular for a reason.
It's also the second adaptation of the trading card game, as originally Bandai Namco had the rights to it, and it was essentially just basically war with a few other small things.
Mm-hmm. One in chat mentioning that they played old Yu-Gi-Oh back in the day.
I sadly do not have my remaining deck from back when I played more, but that was because I gave it to a friend who was going through a bit of a rough time, and it was one of those things that's like, here, I'm really not playing anymore. I know you're still trying to play on some of that stuff like that. Here, hopefully this will help remember, some of the good times and help you out with that one, which it actually did help a lot. As I said, I played back when I was a teen, starting out in like college. So you figure, 2005, 2006, 2007. Like, if you can imagine, for any of you that are on the older side, just like one of your friends is going through a bit of a rough time, that kind of stuff, and it can help, think of the good times. Like, you do what you got to do to help them. More than the financial implication of the cards now looking back at it.
Mm-hmm. Since it does look like there's still plenty of time before the run. We've been sitting here for a while, but chat, again, there's so much more left to this event. You just saw a tiny sticker tail. We've got, of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 Battle of Great Duelists coming up. And then once that's done, we have the long run of this marathon. Persona 4 Golden, Hard Golden Ending, NMG by Fujikura. That's going to be a 9-hour run. So yeah, you're going to have to strap in for that one. It's a giant behemoth of an RPG. Persona series kind of known. A Persona and SMT series kind of known for being those long RPG runs. And even playthroughs casually. They take a while.
That is very true. That is very, very true. However, I also know that there's huge ads out for that one, and luckily you're not going to have to see it on the PS Vita on that one there, because that was where it was originally released, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Shoutouts to Atlas finally realizing, hey, more people might want to play this game and finally releasing it on other platforms.
Looks like the run itself will be on PC, so looking forward to that 9-hour behemoth run coming right up after Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4. And past that, we're getting into the final few hours of the event. Bat to the Heavens, 54 Lanterns, which has an absolutely absurd incentive, in changing the controller to a Beatmania 2 Deluxe controller, which is not something I thought I would be saying for, Bat to the Heavens. That game is a platformer. I don't know how you're going to play a platformer with a 2DX controller.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
I have to see how we're gonna do that, because that's already been met.
As I said, I can imagine, just because of how, considering people have managed to beat Super Mario 64 on drums, there's probably a way.
Yeah, there's people that have beaten Mario 64 on drums. There's people that have beaten Mario Wii on piano. There's people that have beaten Celeste one-handed. Wink, wink. There's a few people that have interesting control schemes for a few games. And this is no exception.
I mean, in all fairness, I've taught myself to actually beat a few of the more easier smuffs that I run with actually a single hand. So it is very doable on a lot of weird control schemes. Might add the way I managed to do that was thank you single Joy-Con and a lot of remapping to basically allow me to hold that vertically.
Single Joy-Con is just really nice for one-handed gameplay. It is small enough that you can hold it in one hand and have a miserable time.
I was going to say, I just wish it was actually, a bit more maneuverable with some the button layouts, but that is what it is. Thank you, Switch 2 Joy-Cons, for actually being a bit larger. Which actually begs the question as to whether or not we'll see a Switch 1 or Switch 2 there.
Interesting. We will see.
And whether or not it's going to be on cartridge or not. There really is no difference with the games on that one there. Although, fun fact, you will not have to see an actual glitch that is sort of exclusive to the early days collection when you enter and exit a game multiple times after a while. Trust me, finding that one while actually rooting another one of the Yu-Gi-Oh games is amusing because no one's going to ever fix it. But you can actually lock up the game.
Oh.
It's takes 10 to 15 plus, entering and exiting almost instantaneously on that one, and eventually it's just you lose your border around there. It's okay, back out. It's the the border will still say it's on, but it's not there. Then you back out again, re-enter. It's it's back, and then you do it one or two more times, and the game will no longer read inputs. So, fun fact. Then again, this is also using 7 Trials to Glory or Duel Monsters International 2 to give its Japanese title, and might add, that is the most glitchy Yu-Gi-Oh game out there. It's just a surprise that the speedrun does it all glitchless.
Interesting. I do see people in chat mentioning that they saw the second last game being East. Yeah, going back to the schedule, Persona 4, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4, then Persona 4 Gold, and Bat to the Heavens, and then we're into the final few runs with Yoshi's Cookie, Super Mario Party Jamboree, Splatoon 3 Side Order, Pump It Up Phoenix by our own Zello, Ender Magnolia, Bloom in the Mist, East 2 Chronicles, and then finishing out with a marathon classic in Super Metroid Reverse Boss Order. A lot of these runs do not have commentators, so if you know anything about any of those games and would like to help by speaking on air, then !forum to get the sign up form to do so. We are accepting commentators all the way through the end of the event. So if you're confident that you know even anything about these games, if you can yap about what goes on in those games, that would be very appreciated to have you on. Again, !form to get a form to sign up for that.
Yes, chat. East wanted to have had a lot of influence on the RPG stuff. If you've never gone and seen just like how beautiful the original TurboGrafx versions of them were, they are very, very, very beautiful for their time, and the soundtracks in almost all these games are, use the term, chef's kiss. Highly recommend looking those up if you're a fan of video game music. Those are just some of the most beautiful. I mean, Falcom as a whole is known for that.
Yeah, I do think I remember seeing on social media a few days back, a friend reposted a video of the original composer for that series finding like original project files for music from those games, which is an absolute gem to be finding in this era.
I mean, in all honesty, like, franchises just, it's one of those franchises that's not only criminally underrated, but also criminally underrated for its music. Another one is the whole Ace Combat series, which shout outs to Bandai Namco for actually working on the 8th game in that series. If you want to talk about how good their music is, the fact that last time Japan hosted the Olympics, they actually played something from it. I think it was 7 as part of the walk, for the athletes walking into the stadium. So that just shows how much influence that franchise has had. Just hoping everything goes well with as far as just run, making sure everything's good considering the hold up on this end. Probably something with technical difficulties wise.
It looks like they did mention on the mainstream that it might take a little while to get going, so just have to sit tight and wait for a little while.
Which is always an okay thing. I just gotta make sure I don't run through all of my notes for the game and ahead of time. But I will say one of the positive notes about the early days collection, again, shout outs to Konami for releasing that, is they did also, although it's not as feature rich as something like the Mortal Kombat collection, which Digital Eclipse worked on, they did manage to find copies and translate the original instruction manuals and a few of the box arts, because there's a lot harder things to find from that era, especially in Japan. As the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gone from a maybe we should care about this to its worldwide phenomena that it is now. You want to talk about one of the main things that is keeping Konami afloat? It's not just pachinko machines.
Real quick, while we're still on the break screen, I do want to extend a shout out to OC Remix, of course, providing all of the, or at least a large portion of the break screen music for this event and a lot of other events, both in Japan and in the West. Bunch of cool game remixes, and And I've been doing music recently, and I've been thinking maybe I can throw something over there. But yeah, their music absolutely amazing, and it's keeping us company through this little setup section. If you ever want music to put on your playlist, go check out OC Remix and maybe search up your favorite game series. There might be a couple cool remixes over there. As we get into a bit more Sonic music on there.
Reading chat on some of the Konami takes on that one there is always nice. I mean, yes, despite when they had some falling out with Hideo Kojima and a lot of other things, they have, at least tried to get better nowadays. Just like how Capcom is finally bringing Mega Man back. And thank God for that one there.
I'm looking at the crowd camera and I'm just remembering how absolutely packed the crowd was for was it Pokemon? It might have been Pokemon. It was certainly a morning run. I think it might have been Pokemon this morning. There were so many people in the venue, even though it was such an early morning run in Japan. It was like 4 a.m. and half of these seats were filled.
It's Pokemon. I don't mean to sound it that way, but it's like, despite everything going on with the Pokemon Company and the whole issue of Power World, and I'm not even going to get into that one. I'm just,
no, absolutely.
I'm happy. I am happy that there was a chance that they will actually lose that whole kind of stuff. And that's for a whole different can of worms, but
yeah, I just think it's amazing that they had that sort of turnout at 4 a.m. in the morning, because for anyone that is not aware, in Japan, generally trains do not move between 12 a.m. to 4 to 5ish a.m. So people that were there to watch the Pokemon run at 4 a.m. or right before 4 a.m. even were there the entire night.
I mean, Japan is known for having people wait around for, for anybody that's ever been to a convention, for like some of the large ones where you've had to wait outside for stuff. Japan is known for that for a lot of things on there. So there are enough fans out there for that will wait for those types of things.
Yeah, there are people that will simply wait for these things. Amazing. Yeah. Also amazing, I will mention that RTA in Japan always gets this level of turnout, even though if you're used to events in the West, such as in such as for example GDQ, or something like RPG Limit Break, you're used to these larger events being held in a hotel venue where people stay there for the entire week. RTA in Japan is held in I believe a conference hall. Not a conference hall, but a hall of some sort in Tokyo. It is not an event where you stay there for the entire time. It is an event where you go home or back to your hotel if you're coming in from afar, and then go back the next day.
I mean, in all fairness, their conference halls and stuff like that are very large. Not as big as a convention center, but they're actually pretty larger than a hotel, as I believe some sporting events have, like, where they are held for like wrestling and other stuff, are still treated as being in a hall versus a stadium or what's the term? Or a center or arena type setup. So
Mhm.
they're still usually pretty big.
Yeah, I believe RTA in Japan is held in at least this one. Actually, this one and both this one and the summer one are held in one floor of an office building. This one being floor a basement floor, and it's significantly larger than the summer venue, which is held on the 7th floor of an office building in Yotsuya, which is amazing that they don't hit capacity on their events as often as you'd think.
I mean, the speedrun scene for Japan has been growing a lot recently, and I know this as an anime game speedrunner who you do tend to see a lot of both English and Japanese in the Discord for that one. It's like a lot more of the games, have been found that are just like, more people coming in and just more people wanting to check out things. And shout out to Dragon Ball Z for finally making it into a GDQ. Highly recommend, in a few months checking that one out. But like overall, just the passion for the for anime has grown a lot more.
Mm-hmm. It's really exciting to think about. Yeah, I'm going back to the venue topic because I am remembering my time when I actually did go to RTA in Japan's Summer 2023 a couple years ago in person. That venue is very, very small. Again, it is just the 7th floor of an office building, and not even the entire 7th floor. There is the stream room, which is not as large as you'd think it is. It has maybe 100, maybe 200 seats at maximum. And then there's the lounge area, which is about the same size as the stream room. And then there's the smaller staff room and practice room, and that's it.
I mean, in all fairness,
anything outside of that is outside the venue.
But in all fairness, they're having to condense a lot of stuff. As I know, Japan, us here in the West, we're used to having like a lot more space, and in Japan, because of how small of a country it is, geographically speaking, not on that one there, but like a lot of things are more condensed.
Yeah, a lot of things are condensed. Although I do know that there are events in Japan held at hotel venues. There is one I'm specifically thinking of right now. It also may be important to mention that RTA in Japan is a fully non-profit. So they might not have the ability to get those kinds of venues because of that that sort of restriction they have on them. I say restriction, but they've set on themselves, of course.
Fair point on that one there. I mean, as long as the fans make it, and they enjoy, the passionate stuff with speedruns, I think we're all happy to see that. There's so many great older games that have never even touched speedrun-wise, or when they have, only 1 to 2 runners have done it, and sometimes not kept good notes or stuff like that. I, of course, can speak from experience as someone who has rooted a few games speedrun-wise, and have thought about running some games, and it's just is there any notes that I could find or something to help speed up the stuff? And you'd be surprised about how hard it is to find some information for some games outside of Japan.
With that said, it does look like we're coming up on 2 hours in setup. Or 1 hour in setup, excuse me.
Wow.
Not common you see something like this.
This just reminds me of the old actual GDQ problem they had when it came to the whole, I think it was like a 8-person Tetris the Grandmaster arcade race with actual arcade machines from, I think it was 2017 or 2018, which taught their tech crew to actually remember to listen to what the runners have to say.
Yeah, speedrun events definitely not a stranger to these tech issues.
Oh, howdy, that is true. Oops. Sorry, y'all. Checking chat via my phone and forgot I had. It's still on. We're just hoping it all works out.
Here's hoping, because if not, that would simply be very, very unfortunate.
This is true. But y'all will really enjoy the speedrun if you're a fan of the older Yu-Gi-Oh games.
I do know I seem to remember, at least in the past, they did have times, specifically I think it was last winter, where they had to swap a couple runs around to get setup done because they had tech issues. Though here it's not something that you can really do with how long the next run is. Shoutouts to 9 hours. And it looks like we're finally getting into it. So everyone, this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 Battle of Great Duelists. The floor is yours to talk about the run.
And it does look like it was Yugi versus Joey. If color is correct, give me a sec. Did they confirm the bids? Or did it,
Not yet.
こちらのゲームの遊戯デッキ会話デッキの世界記録持っております。
そうそう、遊戯会話。
ので本日はどうぞよろしくお願いいたします。
Well, I'll take a listen to see if they mention it here.
今回解説の方お呼びしております。SS さんよろしくお願いいたします。
はい、解説の SS です。26日のブレードキメラに続き、遊戯王4の解説を担当させていただきます。よろしくお願い申し上げます。
はい。さて、プレイに先立ちまして今回ですね実施していた寄付額投票の結果をですねこちらで報告したいと思います。まず、各キャラの相棒カードをですねこれ目標額達成で組み込むことになってたんですが
Yeah, they're mentioning incentives right now. They will be using the quote unquote partner cards, which are the Dark Magician, Blue Eyes and Red Eyes.
こちらの2つが選べる。
And the decks they will be using are Yugi and Joey/Jonochi. So that it's going to be a great race.
It should be. To give some information about the runners, you and Arus, I have no clue how to pronounce our other runner's name. You want to take a guess at it?
Yeah, you and Arus. I want to say.
Both of them have the first and second place times respectively on speedrun.com to give a comparison for their best. Yu's best Yugi time is 1 hour 35 minutes and 29 seconds. Kaiba 1 hour 33 minutes 39 seconds, and Unochi/Joey 1 hour 33 minutes 22 seconds.
私が勇気です。なので、ちょうど今開いてる画面で
I'm not good at pronouncing names. our other runner, like best time for Yugi is 1 hour 38 minutes 20 seconds. Kaiba 1 hour 35 minutes and 42 seconds, and 1 hour 35 minutes and 9 seconds for Joey, which was from about 2 weeks back.
ぜひ資料と合わせて今回のデュエルご覧いただければと思います。
They're both going in there and telling the game that they do want to actually delete their file.
初期化するをはいをした瞬間タイマーストップですね。
はい。
It's like used on Joey and
はい、では3カウントの後デュエル開始といたしましょう。それではゆうさんお願いいたします。
is on.
And they're gonna get started.
させていただきます。デュエル開始の宣言をしよう。SS。
はい、かしこまりました。それでは3カウントで始めていきたいと思います。
So it'll be very interesting to see on that one there.
デュエル開始。はいというわけで早速。
And looks like they're going. And you want me to see them go in and start entering passwords.
このゲームではパスワードを入れずとも用意してある。
As that is one of the biggest things about this game. It, unlike a lot of the later games, actually has passwords that are free. So, unlike, this is also one of the last games to have that as a freebie. As later on, starting in, I think it was... No, you still have it in 5, you still have it in Worldwide, and then you still have it in Chef and the others. Anyway, to start off with information about the game itself, well, our runners are entering in a lot of passwords to give themselves a lot of one-offs because you can only get one copy of each card via passwords. The game was the 5th Game Boy game released, even though it's called Duel Monsters 4, that is specifically referring to the card game as itself, not just the game itself, as the Game Boy games that were released up to that one were the original Duel Monsters, then Capsule Monster GB, which was all about capsule monsters, and also an RPG. Then you had Duel Monsters 2, Dark Duel Stories. No, it was actually different than our Dark Duel Stories. That was Duel Monsters 3. I have it written down here. Give me a minute, just let me find it on that one there. It was Try Holy God Advent, Dark Duel Stories 2, which is what got ported over here to the West. And then you have this game, which was Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 Battle of Great Duelists, which was Konami's attempt at doing a sort of Pokemon-esque style game, where you have each person have their own deck. You know, each version of that one, some things are exclusive to each, like the final boss, well, not so much final boss, but the unlockable stuff with which characters you would beat at the very end of the game, and stuff like that. The game came out in the year 2000, and both 3 and 4 came out as well. For those that are wondering about the remaining Duel Monsters, as to the highest number 1 up to, it was 8. You have, after 4, you had Duel Monsters 5 Expert 1, which was the first of the actual games to be based off the proper TCG, which later would see a sort of remaster as the Eternal Duelist Soul, the second game outside of Japan to be released, which was a hybrid between DM6 and the original, with some of the changes on that one. Although sadly they did take out the dual puzzles from DM5, and then 6, which was the second expert style rules. Basically, they had 2 versions of that, with Expert 1 and then Expert 2, which Expert 2 would become the basis for Worldwide Edition Stairway to the Destined Duel, which was manipulated, which had a few interesting things on that one. It was the first, I won't say simultaneous release, but came out within a couple weeks of each other in the US and Japan. And then lastly, you had Duel Monsters 7, the Sacred Cards, and then finally Duel Monsters 8, Reshef Destruction, which would be the last 2 games to feature the style of gameplay you will see here, which is not quite the trading card game, but not quite its own thing. I guess I will hold off explaining the rules until they're done editing out all the passwords. which their password entering is actually very good. I don't know if they have, I'm pretty sure they do not have everything memorized yet, but what they're doing right now is just getting all the cards without having to manually just try to win, because it's this game you only get one card or, win. But our runners need to beat 10 opponents, 5 each for them, and then enter in a credits password once done, because that is the way you see the credits. You unlock the ability to use that. But their opponents in the first screen, because there's 3 screens they have to go through, are Esperoba, Beko Tsunami, Rex Raptor, Simon, yes, that's Simon from Forbidden Memories, and then Weevil Underwood. And on the second, it will be Arcana, the Rare Hunter, Isizu, and Strings. And the final screen will be Pegasus. Pegasus J. Crawford to give his Japanese name, or Maximilian Pegasus for everywhere outside of Japan. A fun fact about the game is that you can trade between it and the previous 3 games. And this game still has the deck capacity system, which each card has a certain point value, so your total deck has to be within that, point value for it, which is why a lot of people associate this with the way the final, well, at least for the TCG, the new format that they've created called Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis is sort of similar to that one. Thank you, Konami, for finally having an official second format. You do have a duelist level. Basically, within that, it's a... Essentially, it is a level that determines how strong some of your cards can be in the deck, as they do try to limit you. And as I said, I will get into more of how gameplay is once stuff gets started. Basically, the passwords are being used for allowing them to have a good deck early on. If you notice how some of the cards actually do have some of the stuff up there, how you have a... At the top of the screen, you have a thing up the top where you have something out of 1600. That is their actual amount of stuff for the deck, and essentially their deck capacity right now is 1600, so that is the maximum amount of points they can have in their deck. Each card having its own, point value, as I said. An interesting difference between this and one of the older games with Duel Monsters 2, it didn't cost you deck capacity to enter in passwords. Unlike the actual trading card game, you do have to actually use 3 tributes to get anything that's level 9 to 12. So 1 tribute for 5 and 6, 2 for 7 and 8, and then 3 for anything remaining on that one there. Trap cards were still automatically activatable, unlike later games, so that one there. You hear them talking about that stuff, and with them finally getting into gameplay, I guess I will start explaining some of the stuff about the rules of the game. At least for that one there. Similar to a game like the Sacred Cards, they have the fact that if you still draw 1 card per turn, you still see a lot of stuff like that, but unlike everything else, you see them using a lot of weaker monsters, and also on occasion fusing, which is in this game, by you having to set things on top of each other. However, it does not count its actual attack. It doesn't count towards the 1 summon per turn. If you notice, the star levels are completely different on that one there. And each of them have different effects. If you notice how they're killing their opponents as fast as possible, This is a combination of things gameplay-wise. I do not think you will see ritual cards, but essentially, with rituals in the game, you don't need to have specific cards like Forbidden Memories, but you do need to have a specific type, card to actually usually get stuff to work. The instruction manuals, for example, gives the example of how if you want to create Millennium Shield, you'd have to use at least one card that is actually a shield as part of the ritual requirements. The game does have an actual forbidden. It does have a limited list, as at the time they did not have a ban list. That did not come about until 2004, and you could thank a lot of cards like Chaos Emperor Dragon and Yatagarasu for that later on. But the cards that are limited in this game to where you can only have one copy per, basically one copy in their deck, were the pieces of their Exodia, Arbor Moth, Great Moth, Perfect Ultimate Great Moth, Coon of Evolution, Petite Moth. I guess they really didn't want you to actually be like Weevil and just get a giant creature ass. Dark Hole, Regeki, Swords of Revealing Light, Super War Lion. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the one thing. Zera the Mat, Millennium Shield, Blackluster Soldier, Fiend's Mirror, Gate Guardian, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Megamorph, Performance of Sword, Hungry Burger. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the next one. Skull Guardian, Trihorn Dragon, Serpent Knight Dragon, Cosmo Queen, Sakura, Crab Turtle, Seiko Puppet, Dharma Sword, Javelin Beetle, Fortress Whale, Duckable Rider, Mask of Shine and Darkness, or Mask of Shine and Dark, Mr. Black Chaos, Relinquist, Also Dies Restrict, Brain Control, Change of Heart, Multiply, Pot of Greed, Obelisk, Slifer, and Winged Dragon of Ra, and Heavy Storm. So most, if not all of the ritual monsters in the game were limited to one copy. The game also has an actual augment chart. It's essentially, an alignment chart. It's still early here. Where essentially, if your type of card is stronger than your opponent's, you will automatically destroy it, unlike Forbidden Memories' Star Sign system. So, for example, if it's a Pyro monster, if it's got an affinity for Pyro, that will beat Forest, Forest beats Wind, Wind beats Earth, Earth beats Thunder, Aqua beats... Thunder beats Aqua, and then Aqua beats Pyro. You also have a Light, Shadow, Fiend, and Dreams. I said it was similar to Sacred Cards, where Shadow beats Light, Light beats Fiend, Fiend beats Dreams, Dreams beats Shadow. Then you also have a Divine alignment, which is usually exclusively for ritual monsters, and I believe the God cards.
皆さんの祈りが通じており、激流層まだ出てません。なんとかこのまま突破したい。なんとこのまま。で、今、ユさんが4戦目、アルスタが3戦目とちょうど1戦ぐらいの、タイムの差が出てるんですけど、このゲーム
You'll see them, just winning as fast as possible here. Usually using the fusion ability, which, as I said earlier, does, you play the card on top of each other, and you still only get one monster a turn. As a summon, you only draw one card its turn, but if you notice why and how they are actually just bringing out large creatures and able to kill things with just very weak creatures, that is due to the game's actual stuff. The actual alignment system. Sorry.
攻撃力1750のモンスターでして、デッキに素で入れておりますので、通常であれば出すことはできないですけど、リリースを1枚出してで、生贄召喚で出すことができます。今でいうアドバンス召喚ですね。
Anyway, each of the creature types, if you do see a field spell, each of them actually do have a different burst, a different power bonus than the straight 500, and then the straight actual value that you would see in the actual card game. The field advantages in this game actually were essentially they would give an attack and defense bonus of if the monster had an advantageous, it was multiplied by 1.3 as far as how much it would increase their power, and disadvantage was 0.7. But to give a breakdown of that, for dragons, they were compatible with mountains and no disadvantage field. Spellcasters was Yami, aka just the dark field, and no disadvantages. Zombies were good with wastelands and no disadvantages. Warrior was Sogen, aka Meadows. Beast Warrior was Forest. Beasts were also just forests. Oh, wrong. Also, Beast Warrior also had affinity with Sogen as well. Winged Beast was Wasteland with no disadvantages. King was Yami, of course. Fairy, ironically, had a disadvantage to the Yami field, but no increase. Insect had Forest with no drawbacks. Dinosaur was Wasteland. Reptile was... Wrong minute. Find it again. Reptiles had no field that they were powerful for. Fish was Umi, of course. Same thing with Sea Serpent. Machine actually had a disadvantage on an Umi field, so they did take that into consideration for you're a machine. You're not good at... You will probably have problems with water. Thunder had a positive on water as well. Same thing with Aqua.
攻撃力、守備力ともに300以下の下級モンスター40枚でデッキが組まれてるんですね。なので、相手のね、攻撃力を上回る。
Pyro did not really have an advantage to anything, except that it did have a drawback to water. Of course, fire puts out water, so water puts out fire. Rock also had an advantage on wasteland, but did not for Umi, and plant had an advantage in the forest.
召喚魔族は結構ね、カジキやビス魔族ばっかだったんですけど、結構ばらけてるんですよね。まあ、具体的に何が難しいかというと、鉄のサソリ、ダンシングエルク、キャタピラー、ミリスレディウムというね、森魔族のモンスターが4種類計、12枚入っていますんで、森魔族に弱い風魔族のモンスターは簡単に負けてしまいます。まあ、具体的に言うと今ね、ヤマトのドラゴン絵巻、ユウさんが出してるんですけど、このドラゴンが、攻撃力900なんで、まあ、相手300までのモンスターしかいないので、本来楽勝なんですけど、属性負けすると。
Now, although you won't see it here, the game does have a very robust trade system, as I mentioned earlier, with what you can and can't, the ability to trade with a lot of the older games. You can trade every card from the old school, from the previous 4 Duel Monsters games, well, the previous 3 Duel Monsters games, with some restrictions. Cards that can be traded to DM1, you can only trade card numbers between 1 and 365 that were in Duel Monsters 4, which I will add. The original Duel Monsters was similar to War to some degree, with not much added to it. For 2, it was between 1 and 720. However, you'll note that if a card was combined together with parts from Duel Monsters 2, which was also in Duel Monsters 3, where you could combine certain cards together to make new ones, you would lose the parts if you were trading from DM2. DM3 has some restrictions, but not as much on that one there. And then DM4, of course, you could just trade everything on that one there.
黒煙弾
レッドアイズブラックドラゴンです。そうでこんな感じでですね、いろいろ上級モンスター立てるためにはね、リリース2体必要なんですけど、結構ね、このレッドアイズブラックドラゴン、攻撃力2400と結構高くて、まあ1000弱のモンスター2体いなければ、基本的にもうね、リリースした方が火力高くなりますので、特に序盤では結構貴重なダメージソースとして活躍してくれます。
I will add that you can see here them just getting rid of the back row. You could play as many cards as you wanted and play as many cards as you wanted, but you could not use certain things multiple times. As you can see, some cards have the effect, some cards don't, and some cards that do not have effects normally in the game have effects here.
モンスターになってくれますね。でドローンもこの分裂させるか、あるいはあれですね、そのままあえて分裂せずに攻撃をするか。で分裂するとその他
You can see them using a lot of different things there.
問われる非常に楽しいで考えて 使っていくのは楽しいモンスターになっています。で、鉄のサソリこういう250なんで、今ね、守備表示にしておいて、で、こういう表示誘いました。で、これ山に止めに来て効果を発動しまして、で、今ね、アルスさんもサンドウィッチで攻撃をしてきますね。こういう場面になってしまえば、
You sadly won't see the god cards played in this one, although they are in the game. In order to actually have the ability to use them, you have to actually augment your deck, which essentially means getting to a certain point where you see the ability to use them, which is, think of that as a post-game reward. For Yugi, you augment with a Tem, aka Yami Yugi. For Kaiba, it was Yami Bakura, and for Joey, it was Yami Merrick. Also, the game has some hidden characters that you could only get via trading, linking with other linking with the other games and being able to do some shenanigans in order to unlock them, and it would change based off of which games you had linked with and which ones you had or had not beaten. For all three versions, the one characters that were shared between them was my Bandit Keith, and based on the game, if you're using the Yugi version, you could unlock and play against Yami Bakura and Merrick. Mind you, this was one every time, so you could only duel one of those as an extra character each time you were linked between some of the other games. For Kaiba, it was Yami Yugi and Merrick, and for Joey, it was Yami Yugi and Yami Bakura. There's also two secret stage characters, and I have no clue how you would unlock them, and I only know that they're in there thanks to the collected's ability to just naturally unlock them. Someone named Yugi Gonbutori, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, and then Kaiser Umi Uma. Again, I am not even going to try to pronounce their names on that one there, but you get what I mean.
レッドアイス負けます。なので、攻撃力ゼロのモンスターにレッドアイス負けるんで、ぜひそんな悲しいことが起きないように皆さんぜひお祈りよろしくお願い申し上げます。なんでね、結構シモンムーラ
Talk about a few of the other Game Boy games. After this game, you had Duel Monsters 5, as I said, the first with the actual TCG rules. Then you had Dungeon Dice Monsters. Shoutouts to the fan community that is out there. As I know, it is the second most popular of the games from the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise as far as non-dual monsters.
できる限り早くダメージを与えられるという点で優秀ですね。今ちょっとアルスさんの方でね、ストーンゴーストいますね。このストーンゴーストは、岩石族のモンスターとアンデッド族のモンスターを融合することで作れる攻撃力1200のモンスターでして、アンデッドウォリアーと同じく、で序盤の手札で作れる分にはかなり優秀なんで、結構ね、今後もずっと役に立ってくれるキャラクターですね。で、ここでね、今、下門戦5戦目、イさんが終了しましたので、左の方、大脱走龍崎。
You can see they're all doing quite well and winning as fast as possible, adapting their deck. What they are doing is taking advantage of the cards they win, which in this game you only get one card a turn, one card for each game. But what they are doing is trying to win fast enough to get stuff, as well as using card effects to make as many copies as they can to deal as much damage as they can.
先行取れるようにお祈り申し上げます。すみません、ちょっとお祈りばっかり本当に申し訳ないですけど、ちょっとユウさん
Discard, sacrificing, summoning out, doing a lot of little things, and taking advantage of the alignment system to kill things as fast as possible. Because the opponent's decks were fixed, I've got to double check that, but you could immediately know what monster types you would want to put in the deck in order to be able to win fast enough, on top of actually getting strong monsters out. As you can see, something like Neo the Magic Swordsman on Yu's side, being like multiple stars higher than it is without it. In which case, unlike the actual TCG, you would have to sacrifice monsters to get to play it.
Hokuendan.
Ooh, you getting out Red Eyes.
上級モンスターの話をしましたが、リリース1まで出てくる
The actual card that Joey / Janochi wins off of Rex, the original owner of Red Eyes. Well, the second owner, as the original owner in its first appearance was in the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh movie, based off of Season 0. And I do have to admit, it is an epic scene there because you get to see the proto form of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon alongside a few other interesting things.
さっきのシモンと同じくマジックカード、トラップカード一切入れないストイックなスタイルをとっております。では上級モンスターがいる点でちょっとシモンとは一味違ってくるんですが、さらに除去カードとかね、相手をね強化するカードがそういうの一切ないので、こちら側でこうサンドウィッチみたいな、今ねユウさんがちょうど出てますけど、こういう優秀なモンスターを立ててしまえばもう
You can see them setting up stuff, setting up defenses, basically playing for all the other stuff they can, slapping down stuff for fusions.
And
just trying to get as strong a buttress as they can to get rid of their opponent's stacks. As you still have to play the games, you still have to control what you draw, and you can see just how some of the larger monsters are present, but they do end up, requiring some things.
このゲーム絵面がちょっと全く同じなんで、この辺はちょっとね適宜私が触れていくことです。で、この今魔法のランプ
Everybody, the runners are complaining about how bad the RNG is here and there, as unlike a normal race, where it's randomizer, you can tell them both, actually enjoying the stuff for that one and just relaxing and enjoying it. Which, as far as the trading card game goes, you're just there to have fun with your friends.
やるしかないですね。
これはもう
Ooh, and you could see them technically thinking about taking a reset there. At least pressing the button for, the menu. Unless that might have been for manipulation, but some of the older games were a bit easier to manipulate, at least for the Game Boy games.
これで一番有名なのは砦を守るよく言うと遊戯が使っていたモンスターなんですけど、砦を守るよってすごい可愛らしい感じになって、でこの車族のカーっていうのもね、車族のカーって感じでなんかカラスっぽくなっちゃってたりとかなかなか面白いんで、結構このねヤマタのドラゴン絵巻もこれただのヤマタの
But you can clearly see them just like trying to get out as strong of cards as possible when they can to summon and attack. And do what they can do. So shout outs to the old, Game Boy music on that one there. As some of the Yu-Gi-Oh games really do have great music, even if you wouldn't think it. So shout outs to Taya, or Anzu to give the Japanese name for her. Some fun facts about the anime, I'd say, is, as I've mentioned before, Season 0, which was the very first adaptation of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, came out, I believe it was like in, was it 1999 or 1988? It was done by Toei, people that are most known for Dragon Ball. It was a lot darker than what eventually would become later on. It only had 26 episodes, and I highly recommend at some point you all checking out that one. It's on YouTube, although fan subs because never was released outside of Japan, but it is a treat. Green-haired Kaiba and all. Then you have, what is known as, Duel Monsters, which is the standard one. It's where you have a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh memes come from.
あともう次の感じ終わりですね、これはね。龍崎はこんな感じでもう相手守備表示しかしてこないので、もう基本的にもう妨害の魔法カードがないのはいかにありがたいかですね。で、岩の選手しますね。これちょっと説明遅れたんですけど。
Right now, I'm just gonna let the runners, summon and attack and all that stuff. Not as many interesting things for this run because you're just trying to play out the games as fast as possible. As the very big beginning thing was them building their decks and entering in a lot of passwords.
こんな感じでね、手札で作って即出したりとか、あとあるいはマンモスいますね。マンモスいますが、もうサンドウィッチの前ではもうソロルールで垂らすという話。
Which is not normally something you would see outside of some of the older games.
岩の戦士で女性モンスター融合しても作れるので、手札で作ってそのまま出して、その次のターンに女性モンスターを出してサンドウィッチになるっていうのも結構。
And yes, Chad, they really do not give you a lot of the older they really do not give you a lot of cards at the time.
上級モンスターなんですが、白魔族なのでここら辺では弱点を突かれることが非常に少ない上に、1450なので、基本的に相手と
You would only get 1 for winning a game. Also, their deck capacity increases by 5 for every game they win.
このカードもずっと使っていける優秀なモンスターです。しかも融合することで3分
Although I believe it also counts when you lose as well, but you kind of do not want to lose a game since, unlike the later games where you have the ability to surrender, in this you have to play out everything. So you have to play things out.
このゲームモンスター
You can see them setting some stuff up, fusing monsters together, and also getting out more things with some characters. Not characters, but more cards and using their effects.
デッキを組んでいくと、デッキキャパシティ強化してしまってダメですって言われてデュエルできないですよね。ただこのねそうですね、5戦目で入りまして、竜崎戦終了ということで、
And both of them are doing a lot of stuff very fast, since this is not as slow as some of the other games where you have to think a bit more. And that's not to say a good or a bad thing, that's just to say more about one of them having to take a reset. Well, I don't know if that's a skip to not have to unlock certain characters, but there we go. We'll on to the first battle against Revolt, although going second, not first. The one positive note is that the game does give them a lot more stuff with the ability to move faster as part of the early days collection. They did add a bit of a speed up for the game for some of the older games. God, I wish they included that for some of the other games, but it is what it is there. But you also notice that they are not using any of the enhancements for the collection. That's because those are banned, and a lot of duelists, and a lot of speedrunners will agree that they do not want them. The ability to rewind, that kind of stuff like that. So you will notice that this is all based off of a runner's pure skill.
この守備力1200の兵隊に伏せられてしまって守備表示にされると、もうストーンゴーストとか今強化入れない命の砂時計ですら攻撃通んないんですよ。なのでもうとにかく岩の戦士を使うか、あるいは炎魔族のモンスターで倒す。
Hourglass of Courage there. Also say hi to Anzu again. The game at present does have some effect monsters, but not as many as you would see later on.
攻撃力1500、守備力2000のモンスターや、5機ボール、攻撃力1200、守備力1400のモンスターがバリ出てきてしまうことが。
And because you're only able to draw 1 card each turn, except if you have 5 cards in hand, in which case you aren't able to draw at all. You'll see them be able to use things to get stuff that they want, and to be able to actually have some stuff on there. Stuff out. Field layout, you see the monster cards are above. There were no actual continuous spells, I do believe. There were magics in there, but there are equipped spells and field spells. They're just right now playing out what they can, building up the deck as fast as possible, getting monsters out that are high level when they can, and just managing their deck capacity. I'm betting that when they put in a lot of the stuff for their with that giant list of passwords, they were also adding in some stuff for once they get certain higher deck capacities to guarantee their 1 copy of, as the passwords will only give you 1 copy of them. 召喚が非常に少ないので、こうやって召喚権使わずに場にモンスター出すことができるというのはそれだけで偉いんですよね。今サンドイッチソース、さっき説明したね、岩の戦士に女性モンスター化されてサンドイッチを作るっていうね、場面早速使いました。いいですね、今兵隊で攻撃表示でしたけど、この兵隊や守備表示だったのをビシュアル。You hear them complaining about some of the stuff. At least I think that's what they're doing with some of the things. Making sure things work out. Using some stuff on there. The fun fact is this game actually does have an English translation now, thanks to the early days collection, so you yourself can try it out yourself with an official patch. well, I shouldn't say patch, but an official actual use.
羽賀さん今回ちょっとね大きなイベントだからってことで張り切ってますね。もうまあこのストックイムシ見たらあんまり強くないモンスターですけど、そうストックイムシも
Both of them are doing quite well on that one there.
安心です。でこのバーニングフェニックス今ねちょっとユウさんの方に出てますが、こちら炎魔族のモンスターで攻撃力850のゲームオリジナルのモンスターですけど、で今アルサもね持ってますね。このモンスターかなり優秀でして、森魔族のモンスターがねインセクター派がもうほとんど大半占めてますんで、この炎魔族を出すことで上級モンスターであろうがほぼ一方的に倒すことができるんですが、
黒煙弾
黒煙弾でそうですね。こんな感じでね、今、アルスタが、バーニングフェニックスで相手のモンスター倒してましたけど、ほぼ多くの大半のモンスター一方的に勝てるんですが、インセクター。
To answer the question in chat, how do you get a place out of this? Of each card, you can use the passwords to get one copy each of all, and then, well, you have to actually win them, or trade with friends. So that does lead to the, hey, if you can, if you got 2 copies of any of the games, you can do the old Pokemon trick of trade over a starter, restart, get the next starter, trade over it to a friend, and just repeat to get all 3 copies of that. Although I do believe need an extra copy of something to be able to make sure you don't fall below a certain number. But apart from that, yes, you can just cheese the system. I will add that some of these monsters did get effects later on in the Sacred Cards and Receptor Destruction. Receptor Destruction being the hardest of all these games with the alignment system.
かなりね、いい感じでバーニングフェニックスたくさん来ております。ありがとうございます。このままね、博士何事もなく終わってほしいんでね、頑張っていきましょう。で、黒木モリノビッチをね、出して、で、値段山城を強化したんで、兵隊槍以外であれば勝つことできるんですが、ちょっと相手の場に2体残ってるんで、いいですね。そう、幸い派がそこまで上級モンスターの数は多くなくて、
And yes, the older games where you only were able to get 1 copy of a card each time were a pain. This would be actually changed in Duel Monsters 5, Expert 1, which was the actual TCG thing, or Sacred Card, not Sacred Cards. The Turtle Duelist Soul here in the West, that was when you actually should start winning packs, and I believe that was also the first game that actually had dual puzzles. Well, Expert 1 had it, and it was under the title D-Tactics. But then you had the ability to start buying cards in, I believe, Sacred Cards, or no, it was in Dungeons & Dice Monsters as well, where you could buy one-ofs. But either way, the first time it was added to this style of gameplay was in Duel Monsters 7, the Sacred Cards. Which I might add, if you've ever not seen a speedrun of that game, the current world record is below 30 minutes. It is entirely manipulated because the RNG is easily manipulatable in that one. And its end game win condition is actually Destiny board. And it looks like they have another reset on that one there. You see them accidentally hitting the wrong thing there as well, but that's also an understandable thing on that because menuing. And now you see you going on to Esperoba.
モンスターの相性が若干悪い点が9針ですね。具体的に言うとこの風魔族の羽根ちょっといきなりですね、ちょっとロバはね羽賀に比べてそこまで強くはないんですが、こういうこと噛み合わせてあると怖いんですよね。改めて説明していきます。エスパーロバ風魔族の羽というモンスターをねデッキに3枚積みしています。この羽
Also, shout outs to the most famous cockroach in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which I might add started out as a TCG exclusive card and is now finally down to a single copy in just the OCG, aka the official card game, which is what that stands for in Japan, which is different from the TCG here in the West. But no, I'll ask this quite easily. Chat, care to guess what the most famous insect-based card in the game is?
リズマ族のモンスターを出すときにも警戒が必要で、さらに森魔族のモンスターが引き続きますんで、ちょっと先 説明漏れてましたが、ヤマタノドラゴン今ね、ちょっとユウさんが出してますけど、ここら辺の風魔族のモンスターも一方的に負けてしまう都合上、
Insect is difficult because I don't think I know a single one.
Let's put it this way. It is the most hated Yu-Gi-Oh card. I won't say hated, but it affects the entire format of both games. And I'm talking actual TCG nowadays. And that is known as Max C. Or Max G in the Japanese, if I recall. But essentially, it is the card that basically it is the most contentious card on that one because essentially it's a card that you can discard and then for the rest of the turn, whenever your opponent special summons a creature, which nowadays is you do more of those than you do a normal summon. You do a lot more of those. Think of it like for those Magic the Gathering players out there. Think of it like for some decks you're doing a storm deck, but you're doing it with creatures, meaning you're summoning as many creatures as you can on that one there. And Maxi says, okay, your opponent did all that one, I'm going to draw a card for each time you do that. And so if you're going first and you have one of those in your hand, well, you slap down a bunch of stuff to prevent your opponent from doing anything. They start doing stuff to beat your board, and like, okay, since you're summoning a lot to do that, I'll be drawing cards. If you can imagine just what that can deal with things, you can understand why there is a huge difference between card design with that one, since over here in the West it is banned, and finally in the TCG, as of January 1st, it will be down to a single copy. And that's coming from it being at 3 for so many years.
では、アルスさん大丈夫でしょうか。アルスさん、このゲーム以外で走られている RTA はどんなものがありますでしょうか。
そうですね、私はこのゲーム以外だと東宝の理想作ゲームとかをよくやってまして、今年10周年を迎えた幻想人形 M 夢のかけらをはじめとしてダンジョン天の弱とか、あと今度ですね、今解説していただいた
Also, shoutouts to some of the old card arts that were really just very, very, very spooky and very, very, very grotesque sometimes. Also, say hi to Cyberjar, as that was what was on U's screen. Dragon Scroll, Cyberjar. Well, Cyberpod, if I recall correctly. Also seeing a use of Heavy Storm over there. One of the limited cards.
車族は弱点疲れてくるんですよね。では、アルスさんが大嵐を使ってアイテル場を破壊しましたね。これ、大嵐、自分の場とアイテル場のモンスターすべて破壊するので、一旦待ったりして、で、アイテル場でモンスターが出てきたところで、こちらの召喚権残して使って、その後召喚してっていう形を取っていくこともできるんで、なかなか
Also, you just saw Dragon Piper. Ironically, doing some of the cards just by the actual art. Shoutouts to playing a lot of stuff on that one there.
白魔族、例えばね、発光の美少女とかで攻撃力ゼロで済む勝つことができますし、悪魔族は本来幻想魔族に有利なんですが、こちらのね、幻想魔
And
族
Mystical Fan being used quite well on the side.
ダークアイズイリュージョニストと戦艦の邪教神というモンスター、こちら基本的にまだこのデッキ
Now, I do have to say,
弱点を使えるようが
there are some quite interesting things as far as artwork censorship goes. Highly recommend if you've never gone and looked up some of the actual differences in censorship between some of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Arts, between the OCG and the TCG. Highly recommend doing that sometimes, because some of them are quite interesting. There's been a few times where the actual censored artwork has become, well, not so much censored, but changed artwork has become the official art. Notable example is Jackson Fairy Lily, one of the old spellcasters that was limited for a long time because you could pay 2,000 life points to have it increase its attack by 3,000, and for a 4-star, for a monster that could be normal summoned, you getting that ability was very powerful for a long time. But the original art, it was actually had to be changed, not because of it being brought over from, you know, Japan to outside of Japan, but because of the fact that it being a nurse, in a sense, the background was a lot of red crosses, which had to be changed for copyright reasons, due to that being, you know...
効果を持っております。なので、これ使われてしまうとちょっとね、 相手のライフポイントを500回復されると500分追加でダメージを与えないといけなくなるので、かなり困ってしまいますね。なんでこれも3積みしてるんで結構困るんですよね。で、今
As I was saying, it had to be changed due to copyright reasons for that one there. So that's why they have, they adapted the actual alteration of it, which was putting hearts there. Other shout-outs to a lot of the weird, anime changes on that one there. But that's just one of the interesting things with that one. Although if you really want to see, just how dark some of the older artworks could be, look up Last Day of the Witch, original OCG art. And then what they did when they converted it over there. That in and of itself, it just shows, some of how disturbing some of the old card art would be. Oh, and as being pointed out, it wasn't copyright reasons, there was even convention bans on it. Very valid point then. But yes, some of the artwork has needed to be changed, that one there. And I know Kazuki Takahashi, the creator of the game, God rest his soul, because he passed away, a few years back, was annoyed when some of his artwork, for cards that he did, draw himself, was actually changed on that one there, which is why the West still hasn't gotten a few cards here and there. Also, shout out to the most famous Yu-Gi-Oh card that was never saw play in the TCG, Tyler the Great Warrior, which I highly recommend if you've never looked up the story of that card. It is a very heartwarming story about a kid who actually loved the game so much and Make-A-Wish Foundation and how he survived beating cancer and still alive to this day. But just to show you just how important the game has been, to a lot of different people's lives.
ここまでの25戦の激戦を繰り広げたことによって、こちらのデッキキャパシティとデュエリストレベルどちらも結構上昇しています。なのでこの段階で攻撃力1150までのモンスターであればデッキに入れることができますので、このキャッツフェアリーを入れておいて、トードマスターの対策をしているという形になりますね。ででこんな感じでちょっとホーリーエルフ作りましたけど、ホーリーエルフは守備力高いのではできる守備にしておけば安心なんですが。
Chat's also talking about a lot of different lore on that one there. And yes, that's one thing I do have to say about a lot of trading card games. They can be quite fun, and it's always just something like, I will give Yu-Gi-Oh! This much. The fact that they do keep a format that is older, that does not have a rotation system, does mean that if you find a deck that you really like, you can keep it together and just update it every once in a while if you don't get a chance to play. For example, my personal preferred archetype is Synchrons. The actual deck archetype from the main character Yusei from 5Ds, which I might add, considering that one is more of a deck engine versus an actual theme, like Dark Magician and Blue Eyes. It ends up being a bit easier on that one there to keep something and then just update on that one there. You do notice that there is no extra deck / fusion deck in this game. Yet, as I said, fusion summoning is in the game. You just place the cards on top of each other. Also, shoutouts to seeing strengths there.
これどっちだろうというところですね。偽物の罠がありますね。偽物の罠であることを祈りたいところですね。偽物の罠が2枚、激流層1枚なんで3いいですね、取りましたわけですね。カーソルがいった時点でもうこれ激流層ではないことが確定しました。で、偽物の罠、何も効果のないブラフ用のカードです。なので、相手の場に伏せられてるんですけど、これ。
Yes, to say about how fast modern turns are.
偽物の罠が伏せられてしまえば相手はね、
It is a very long procedural thing. At least it's not as bad as some of the turns that have been theorized on that one there in tournaments. One of which being you can lock your opponent out of every card in the game that has ever been printed, but it requires you actually doing something to where you name every card in the game, and it's not even feasibly possible. No one's written a program to actually do that one. Also here in the East. It's ironic that I actually know a lot of the names of these cards. To say hi to Neo the Magic Swordsman. And you really do have to appreciate the differences in artwork. Treat it in the TCG.
左のユさんの方は2戦目が終わって3戦目に入っていくという形になります。 でワープトレイクですね。このワー
We
プト
see
レイク
them onto the second of the screens, or Domino Town 2, as the instruction manual says.
強力なモンスターという話はしたんですけど、この突破的で
Also, for those out there that are wondering why, or that know the card that I was talking about, Injection Cherry Lily, for those wondering why it's a spellcaster and not a fairy, it is because its original name was Injection Angel Lily.
はい電気とかですね。ちょっと説明
So it felt more to that one there.
相手のね攻撃力一番高いモンスタ
Aggressive
ー
Courage.
が行動不能にするという効果を持つんですが、ここだけに逆に狙い目でもあります、ホライドモンスターが。というの
Putting
も
up that there, I forget that card name on that one. The structures.
メガサンダーボール、電気トカゲ、エレキズと合計
Playing that out. Aggressive Courage. Summoning, throwing some stuff on down to make fusions as. Although you don't get to keep the fusion at the end of the game, it is faster to throw some of the stuff down to basically make things faster. As in this instance, you want to just get out as much damage as you can as fast as you can. And just use staples. Also say hi to Morphing Jar, a card that has been banned over the time here and there. Is finally finally off the list. Going in and finally into strings for our other opponent, for our other runner. Both of them are doing quite well on that one there. You can start to see the deck edits. However, unlike some of the more modern games, you don't really have much to sort. And the better deck sorting systems wouldn't come about till the expert rules, the expert games.
そろそろね、さっきちょっと3連続でね、森馬族のモンスターばかりの環境でちょっと戦いづらかった。
Guardian to run, which its ability is the same as Sacred Cards, where it summons a free copy of the second of the thing. Which, if you can imagine, getting 3 copies of cards without having to waste things is good. Having to take a reset quick because of getting a bad draw. All part of the run. All part of the run. So say I had a Trap Master.
臨場の恐ろしいところが今存分に発揮されております。でここも含めてちょっとねさっきの紹介したね上級モンスターはどちらもねリリース1枚で出すことができるモンスターなんですが、リリース2枚で出すことができるモンスターの中ではヒューマノイドドレイクという攻撃力2200のかなり強いモンスターがいて、さらに人形といえばオシリスのテンクールじゃないかと思われる原作ファンの方も多いと思います。
Some of the name consistencies have always been weird when it comes to what things mean on that one there, as between death and deaths. I believe someone was pointing out in chat. Although, ironically, if you really want to see some love of different games, Domino in and of itself reference to dominoes as far as the game, not the pieces place. Season Master Reborn to get out another big creature. Ironically, a lot of these cards have been printed, but some of them have not. So it's interesting to see just cards that have not been printed out down there. Also summoning out Red Eyes. Like the giant hand that's just on the screen that killed monsters hasn't been printed out in the game. Yet it's one of those more iconic cards from the older games.
で先ほどまでに比べてデュエルの進捗が遅いと思われますけど、そういうことなんですよ。ステージ2の相手本当に強いです。で今ちょうどアルスさんが人形戦の2戦目に入ってますね。でこれがユウさん人形最終戦なんですが、先手取られていきなりトラップカードを捨てられて、さあ 33% リセットの可能性があります。手招きを使ってとりあえずそうですね、手札で岩の選手を作っておいてからどうでしょう、相手広瀬ですね。これはまだ OK です、まだ OK です。で今ね使った
Both our runners are being great duelists here and doing quite well for themselves.
見たくなかったですけど
having to take a reset,
出ちゃいましたね。
which is a lot of the rules. Sometimes it's just you gotta take it when you notice it, that you need it.
盤面崩されてなんか
As that is one of the things about the run is knowing when you have to actually concede, and since the game does not have an actual surrender button, you sometimes just have to take a reset out of that one. But that's just something you gotta do what you gotta do to try to win as fast as you can. At least this is not as bad as some of the later games where, although you could concede, sometimes you really could not. And that's because later games added in match play where it was best 2 of 3. As I could speak from my own experience of running 7 Trials to Glory. Shoutouts to it being the fastest of the World Championship games to win because of how glitchy it is. I did mention it while we were waiting for things to get started here, but if you ever look up Yu-Gi-Oh! Shop Glitch, that's the game that legitimately allows you to underflow certain things within this shop, which Speedrun Rise is banned, but it just goes to show you how broken of a game that is. However, also the reason why that one is the fastest of the World Championship games is because they tried to make something similar to the Pokemon TCG, so you can immediately go get your dat, go talk, and just immediately enter tournaments. And it was also the one that added in the ability to actually buy structure decks, so it sort of helps out there. Wasn't the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Game with a shop, but it was one of those that actually did help revolutionize a lot of the stuff. And it was also a rushed game, but I do love one of the comments that one of the players of it at the time had mentioned, which was the game is a good game. And by that I mean the sarcastic tone of there was a lot of bugs in that game, and if you want to see a game, a good example of like some of the video games that have like cards that have been programmed incorrectly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was the first GX game, and World Championship 06, I believe, and I think one other has it coded incorrectly to where you could use Restream Destruction as a extra copy of Rakeki, so you have essentially 4 copies of Rakeki in the game that you can have in your deck.
手札同じでした。
Have to take the reset again, but that's just all part of the time. As you can see, just like how you still have to play the games, and so your estimate has to reflect the fact of you still have to play the games. Well, that one there. Mystic Lamp giving the ability to immediately get a copy of Legend. At least I know that's what it does later on in Sacred Cards, but it looks like not. Selling out Rico, I believe, is the card on that one there. 3 cards left. Taking some direct damage to be able to survive and just get to the next draw, and having to take a reset again. And unlike a lot of the other games, having to work around that deck capacity restriction is one of the limiting factors as far as just what you can and can't play. Which does make this run very interesting, as you have to build a deck while not doing a lot of extra attacks. Also, shoutouts to a good visual glitch you could just see on used screen, I believe. Take out stuff like that one there. Unlike the later games, this is actually a pretty quick reset, unlike some of the other stuff. Ouch, I had to take another reset.
デッキは除去カードが多いので、こういう事故が起きる可能性は結構低いところではあるんですけど、まあ本当に次第ではこうなってしまうんですよね。勝てないかもしれません。で、アルスタのサンドイッチ立てられましたんで、まああとはもうね、ライフをゼロにしていくだけという形なんですが、ここでなんかされない、なんか、いいですね、いいですね。相手がモンスターカード出してきた場合はもうそのターンにマジックカードを使えることありませんので安心です。で、これでアルスさんが今4戦目に入ってきました。ちょっとずつ差が縮まってきてますね。今4戦目になってますが、
Yes, chat, it is an onk if you're talking about the Monster Reborn art, which is the Egyptian symbol for the dead, I believe, or in reference to it.
Censored
art is one of those very interesting things when you look up all that one, there is an entire like gallery on that one there. Ironically, some of the arts weren't changed in some of the first few games brought over. As I believe Ring of Destruction, there was Bell of Destruction in the first few ones, still has the grenades, and at least 1 to 2 of them. Finally getting through there. I'm happy about that one there. That'll be a tone of voices for our Japanese runners.
See
them just trying to get through strings as he's pulling the strings on the game. Yes, yes, I know, bad joke, bad joke. But you do get to see a lot of interesting older cards when you see these games because of what you have to do to get them to be able to go fast. As we play all the cards we can, and if you really want to see just some of the older cards, just see love, check out some of the older games. It's sad though that two of the best old school Yu-Gi-Oh games in Nightmare Troubadour and Spirit Color on the DS just are very long as far as the speedruns go because of the sheer amount of stuff you have to do and the amount of grinding. That's why I love running 05 because you can buy structure decks, you can buy booster packs. The packs are actually, well, in all fairness, they actually are not random. Thank God I've got a clip of that showcasing that on my own channel, but the way the actual card game, the way the actual video games have been, I believe Konami's thought process was you could play the card game in handheld because, you know, it's in the hand, you'll be able to, lot more likely you're to be able to play with friends that way versus the console games where those are the things like you can't really take those on the go, so you can, we want to give you games that you normally couldn't play to keep with Takahashi's idea of just loving games. You can tell just how much of a fan of tabletop games he was just by looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh card game in and of itself.
そういうことがないようにちょっとね祈っていきたいところですね。でちなみにレアハンターといえばねエグゾディアなんじゃないかと思われる原作のファンの方もいらっしゃると思うんですけど、ご安心ください。ちゃんとレアハンターエグゾディア持っております。で具体的には封印されても
both of them are doing quite well on that one there. This for this particular game. Stone D. And getting through. Okay, the Rare Hunter getting through that one there. At least they didn't have Exodia. Rare Hunter also being the person that cheats openly in the anime by having 3 sets of Exodia and marking their cards. Also, you can see just how interesting some of the artworks were. Just how, I would say the rest up, but just how interesting some of the art is. And for those wondering who's in the lead, I would say Yu's in the lead to some degree, being on Rare Hunter, but our other runner is also catching up real quick. Also, you can see Stop Defense being played. Yep, Stop Defense on that one there. Very good old card on that one there. Who's this face? Dark Illusionist was what's on the other field right there. Other side, Dragon Scroll. I do have to admit, I do appreciate that they have now finally added in the whole illusion style character, actual theme for spellcasters recently with the illusions. God, I think it was illusion subtype of monster now.
ぜひご連絡ください。
お待ちしております。
で、ちなみに今ですね、レアハンターが封印されし者の右足を普通にバリ出しましたね。そう、さっきちょっとシモンのところで軽く説明しました通り、相手の手札にね、他に出せる下級モンスターがいない場合は、普通に封印されし者バリ出してきます。なので、今ね、もう封印されし者デッキに1枚しか入りませんので、もう守備表示になってバリ出して破壊された瞬間にレアハンターがもう特殊勝利することはなくなったってわけですね。なので、ここら辺はもうね、ますます特殊勝利が遠のいていくところなんですが、ちょっと警戒しなきゃいけないのが、この封印されしエグゾディア、ちゃんと本体が攻撃力、守備力ともで1000と結構高い点なんですね。これがちょっと厄介でして、たまにこの封印されしエグゾディア本体バリ出てくることがありまして、出てくるとこちらの攻撃力900とかのモンスターしかいないと勝つことができないので、結構厄介になることがあります。なんでね、ちゃんとレアハンターのきっと揃うことはなくても切り札はエグゾディアであるということでね、ご安心いただければと思います。その間で後で戦っていきましょう。ね、で今ね、ちょっとお互いのね、相手のレアハンターのライフポイントはちょっと8100、9000となってるんですけど、これゴブリンの飛躍というね、ライフポイント1000回復するカードがあるんですね。で、こうやってちょっと、そう、これデーモンミラーですね。この、ユウさんの左の方でデーモンミラーにサンドウィッチが破壊されてしまいました。で、車族のモンスターどんだけ攻撃力高くても幻想魔族では負けてしまうので、相手の敵に幻想魔族が入っている場合はサンドウィッチを立てても安心とはいかないのが怖いところです。こんな感じでまだまだ何があるか分かりません。大嵐でこのね、盤面破壊されてしまってもうどうしようもなくなるみたいなことも結構ざらでありますんで、グール最弱の男とね、評されましたが、なんてことはない、かなり強いですね。なんでもね、このデスフットとかもね、この幻想魔族に勝ってしまうので、ね、そこだけも含めて結構警戒が必要になります。で、今、状況としましてはちょっと詰まっておりまして、アルスさんが今レアハンター2戦目、ユさんが、レアハンター3戦目ということでちょうど1戦の差になってますんで、で、ここでもうね、アルスさんも盤面かなり強くて、で、ユさんも盤面強いので、問題なくってこのターン、次のターンに何もなければ終わるので、大嵐さえなければもうレアハンター除去カード大嵐だけなんで、それだけをで祈りたいところですね。ジャイアントツさっきちょっと説明しました通り、キャッツフェアリーに負けてしまいましたが、ここまで来てしまえばもう大丈夫ですね。で、ユさんがこれからね、戦闘4戦目入ってきますね。で、アルスさんも順調なところで、ね、魔法剣士ネオを使って攻撃をしまして、で、ドローンで攻撃して、次のターンに何もなければ終わりですね。まずイラを制しますね、OK ですね。これ勝ちですね。で、これで、アルサ3戦目ということで、相変わらず、ちょうど今、1戦分の差がついているという形ですね。今、1戦分の差、これからいくらでもひっくり返りますので、まだまだご注目の方いただければと思います。で、ウィッシュアランディで、もう、挨拶代わりにね、ライフポイント1000回復されましたね。困りますね。もう、で、今ちょっとね、アルスさんの方でトラップマスターですね。このトラップマスターは、遊戯デッキのところで軽く説明しましたが、この効果を発動することでね、硫酸の溜まった落とし穴という、守備力、攻撃力3000までのモンスターを破壊することができるトラップカードを発動することができます。で、それ出すことができる上に、こんな感じでね、戦士族のモンスターなんで、見た目からはちょっと想像つきづらいかもしれませんが、ね、トラップマスター、戦士族のモンスターですんで、ね、こんな感じで、魔法剣士ネオとかね、岩の戦士とか、かなり優秀なね、融合素材になりますんで、ね、効果使った後でもちゃんと活躍してくれる非常にありがたいモンスターです。で、今ね、ベビーティーレックスまで出てますね。このベビーティーレックスは、攻撃力1000着の土魔族のモンスターでして、ドラゴンソウルスタチューと同じく人形戦や、この後レアハンター戦、ここから先もね、ずっと活躍してくれる、なかなか優秀なモンスターです。で、デーモンミラーにまたユウさんちょっと苦しめられてますね。ちょっとリチャーダンで負けてしまいましたが、黒魔族のモンスター以外であれば、パラメータ自体はね、攻撃力700、守備力600とそこまで高くないので、安定して勝っていくことができます。で、これで次のターンでも、ね、ユウさんは、4戦目、終わりで5戦目に入っていくという形になりますね。OK ですね。ですね。で、これで無事に勝つことができまして、で、アルスさんも今のところは封印されしもですね。で、またね、エグゾディアがバリ出てきてますが、で、効果発動しまして、で、黒魔族のモンスターにここからはちょっとね、命を吸った時白魔族のモンスターで負けてしまうので、効果を使った直後でやられてしまうことも結構多いんですが、その前にこんな感じでね、火力でバフをかけて倒していくという効果も、行動もありますので、かなり優秀です。で、これ手札にね、魔法剣士ネオを作ってますね。こんな感じで、バリ1体のリリースを使わないと出すことができなくても出しておくことでこんな感じで融合素材が来るかどうか分かんないときにリリースして次のターンで確実に上級モンスター立てていくという戦法もあります。これ融合モンスターの場合は融合で
Oops, I just realized I had my mic muted. So I don't know how much y'all heard of that one as to me repeating the...
It's been a couple minutes.
For the love of...
All good. All good.
I'll re-explain the augment system then, just because it's been a bit. The game has an actual augment system where are similar to the stars, though the zodiac signs in Forbidden Memories. Each monster has like has an alignment to them. But unlike that, if you attack something that your alignment is stronger than, you automatically destroy the monsters regardless of attack or defense. And stupid question, how long was I muted?
It's been a couple minutes, I'll be completely honest. But if I were to guess, probably like maybe 3-4, somewhere around there.
Okay, so not as bad. Not as bad.
Super long.
Okay. Anyway, to explain, as I was saying, for the augments, for the alignment system, there are 10 different ones. Pyro, Forest, Wind, Earth, Thunder, and Aqua, and Shadow, Light, Fiend, and Dreams. So, the way it goes is Pyro beats Forest, Forest beats Wind, Wind beats Earth, Earth beats Thunder, Thunder beats Aqua, and Aqua beats Pyro. Then the second subset is Shadow beats Light, Light beats Fiend, Fiend beats Dreams, Dreams beats Shadow. And then you have an 11th, which is Divine, and that is exclusive for ritual monsters, and probably the Divine, the God cards.
レアハンターも使ってた大嵐を使ってくる上に悪魔の口づけという
For those that have played Sacred Cards, it is basically that same system.
こちらの場のモンスターの攻守をそれぞれ500全てのモンスターダウンさせてくるカードが2枚そしてさっきも使われてた天使の一致
Yes, as they point out, you had two of them. You had two choices per card in Forbidden Memories. You can think of this system which appeared first in Duel Monsters 2, Dark Duel Stories, as a sort of hybrid between something like Forbidden Memories, but an outdated adaptation to that one. And be glad they don't have the actual TCG, as you try to remember with the augment system. Sorry, y'all. Did not get much sleep last night. Had to be up extra early for this one.
攻撃表示誘発してエルフの剣士は
Both of our runners are doing quite well.
エルフの剣士より攻撃力50高いので50の差で勝てました。アルスさんもちょっと一戦入りました。並びましたね。いいですね。ここで一気に並んできた。このね。
In order to get to each of the screens, they have to win 5 times. They have to beat each opponent 5 times. Also say hi to Isis from Forbidden Memories, aka Shizu.
それに加えて相手の場のモンスターに攻撃で手出しをすることができなくなってしまうんですね。
Also, fun fact: the very first game based off of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise was actually a capsule monster game. It was for PlayStation, and it was just capsule monsters. Train and Breed, I believe, was its full name. But then it was followed by Forbidden Memories or Duel Monsters 1. I forget which of those two there. But just a fun little Yu-Gi-Oh! fact for y'all.
キャットレディという森魔族で攻撃力1900、視力2000のモンスターや、さらにね、散々お世話になってきたね、魔法剣士ネオあたりも相手が融合してくるので、RTA 奏者と同じような融合してくる相手がいたら、それは強いだろうと。
Doing quite well so far.
ここは本当に厄介でして、今ちょうどあれです
ね。Shoutouts to the music of this game.
1戦2戦目、アルさん1戦1戦目ということで、ちょうど1戦分の差がついている感じですね。で、改めてね、解説に戻っていきますと、光の護風剣を使われると、相手の場にモンスターが残ってしまって融合されやすいというところを含めて、単純にリリースの、対象になるモンスターが残っちゃうと言っても厄介でして、具体的には相手上級モンスターもちゃんとデッキで入れています。裁きを下す女帝という攻撃力2100の、モンスターがいるので、これリリース2枚、リリース用意が2枚いると出てきます。それに加えてリリース3枚だとコスモクイーンというね攻撃力2900の本来であれば儀式融合を使わないと儀式魔法を使わないと出てこないモンスターとあと原作で海馬にオベリスクを託したと経緯からがオベリスクの巨神兵も出てきます。今そうですねこのピロンピロンという音がもう護風剣の合図です。こうなると相手に攻撃をすることはできません。3ターンの間でこれでモンスター破壊したいんですけど今ちょっと左の方ですねユウさんの方ですね破壊したいんですけど破壊することできないのでとりあえずこうやって場をね最後効果モンスターの効果とかリリースでアドバンス召喚とか融合とかできるのでサンドウィッチですねこれはちょっと辛い。いやもうこれはとにかく効果して、ね、これでレベル5の効果を使うとこちらの場のモンスターと相手の場のモンスターすべて動きを封じることができるんで、光の護風剣使われてるから同じだねっていいですねヒーローお城ヒーロー偉すぎるそうお城ヒーローこの石津対策で先ほど敵を組み替え
I will say, however,
攻撃力1250の幻想魔族です。幻想魔族は黒魔族に対して強いのでサンドウィッチのは非常に
Yes, as put it out in chat, yes, having the alignment type stuff really would not be good in an actual TCG. It would be a lot more tracking and
Although
as cool as it would be, it would probably be fun in a video game like this, but in the TCG itself, probably not. Also, I do recommend if you've never played any of the older Game Boy games, I highly recommend checking out like Sacred Cards, something like Seven Trials to Glory, and maybe Worldwide Edition, although if you really want to get into some of the more fancy stuff, highly recommend Nightmare Troubadour. Highly recommend Nightmare Troubadour. If it wasn't for having to grind a little bit with some of the with some of the duels, it would be one of those games that, like, if you could speed up the gameplay for the DS, it is the definitive old school Yu-Gi-Oh game. If you want to actually play through it with a decent story and don't mind actually having to deal with like some slower gameplay as far as just like summoning the monsters and stuff like that. If you want something that's a bit more just TCG focused, I would say Seven Trials to Glory is a good example of the end of quote-unquote GOAT format, or what is known as the end of the Duel Monsters era card game format, because the game itself until recently, and even then, is a eternal format. It's just usually formats are referred to by the differences between ban lists, GOAT being the very last one before Cybernetic Revolution came out and introducing Cyber Dragon and fundamentally altering the format, all that stuff. But highly recommend something like that if you want to check out one of the old Game Boy Advance games. There is this as well, and Sacred Cards, which is the GBA sort of version of this game, because unlike having to walk around and unlike having to just do individual screens, it is essentially you get to walk around and challenge people. It's closer to like a hybrid between RPG and the card game. I will say, unlike the other games, there is a static limited list here. And one of the more interesting things I do like about a game like Seven Trials to Glory is it actually has a rotating ban list, which does affect the speedrun of it. But I won't get into that one just because a bit further in there, but I will recommend to check that one out for those that are looking for an interesting take on, not so much take, but an interesting older game to try out. Sacred Cards is sort of like the successor to the Duel Monsters 2 through 4, because it's same gameplay style, just for the Game Boy Advance and walking around overworld. Sheaf of Destruction, although it's the same thing on that one, Konami decided to be like, oh, you think this game is too easy? Okay, let's crank up the difficulty to very hard. So it's one of those, it's like, it is considered the hardest of the Duel Monsters games, as far as the older ones go. モンスターにもサンドウィッチ以外のモンスターで勝てない状況だと場を破壊されてしまうことがあるんですが、これは無事でね、OK ですね。で、これで4戦目突破ということで、Yes, it's question chat. Yes, for Seven Trials, it is sort of like that, but it's every in-game week it changes. There's consistency between that one and it is one of those games that's just like, I'm glad they did it. I wish it had not been as rushed as it was, because later in that year you have Nightmare Troubadour coming out for the DS, and it was one of the last Game Boy Advance games. But in all honesty, it is a game that's sort of like a hybrid between the walking around overworld in Sacred Cards and the actual TCG, so it's a fun one. And I'm not just saying that as someone who speedruns the game and has rooted a lot for that one, but that's some of my own personal background in, being able to talk about the speedrun sense of stuff. But for a lot of the things. Like, 4 is one of those interesting games that we never got here in the US or outside of Japan until the early days collection earlier in the year. But it was also the game that Konami hyped up with being the first of the games to actually have online play. This was the game that launched with online play from the actual collection as day one, so they really wanted people to be able to play this one. It was the one that gets they built the collection around. Excuse me, as far as just these are 3 good games, you could play them with friends. In fact, back then you needed to play them with friends if you wanted to actually duel some of the extra opponents. After Pegasus, who is the final opponent in this one.
これスピラスレディ今出ましたね。そうスピラスレディどういうカードかと言いますと、守備力1400なんで攻撃力わずか50の差でね、守備表示からでリリースなしで出すことはできないですが、岩石族とで女性のモンスターの両方の属性を合わせ持っておりますので、岩石族のモンスターを融合しても、女性のモンスターを融合しても、基本的にはもうサンドイッチになってくれると言って非常に優秀です。さらに手札で融合する際にはね、攻撃力が低いという都合上、岩の戦士やストーンゴーストといった、直接ね、リリースなしでバリ出すことができるモンスターに変えることもできますので、状況に応じてかなりね、この辺、融通の効くね、さまざまな使い方ができる、デュエリストとしての力量が問われるかなり面白いモンスターです。で、アルスさんの方のバリテート氷水、こちらはね、水のモンスター、水属性のモンスターと、女性のモンスターを融合して作れる攻撃力1150のなかなか高いモンスターで、それに加えて、この後岩石族のモンスターを融合するとサンドウィッチになることができるので、そうこうやってね、六芒星の呪縛で攻撃力とか守備力下げられてしまっても、こんな感じで後々融合素材で使えばね、基本的にはもうそのパラメータ下がった分を踏み倒すことができますので、それも優秀ですね。今ね、そうトラップマスターが効果を2回発動しました。これは、闇の訪れというカードをアルさんが使ったんですね。で、これで、あれですね、ユさんが、無事に一周戦をなんとか突破しまして、いよいよ次、成立最後の相手、パンドラに入っていきます。で、パンドラ、黒魔族、幻想魔族中心のデッキでして、原作同様にね、ブラックマジシャン使いとしてブラックマジシャンを3枚デッキに入れてるんですけど、ブラックマジシャンよりも厄介なカードがデッキに入っております。キラードールです。どういうことかを説明しましょう。まず、このパンドラ、守備力900の幻想魔族の時の魔人ネクロダンサと、ジャグラーというカードをそれぞれ3枚ずつデッキに入れておりましてというところですが、まず大嵐を使いましたね。パンドラちゃんとね、デッキに大嵐も入れております。で、大嵐に加えて、ちょっと死者蘇生もありますので、そこだけも本当に厄介です。で、それを置いといて、ちょっとまた説明に戻りますが、攻撃力900のモンスターで相手の幻想魔族のモンスターを攻撃しても倒すことができないんですよ。リセットですね、そう。
I do have to say, you're starting to see just how come the estimate is at 2 hours right now because of the RNG nature of the game later on. You've got to still be able to play the game well, but you also have to deal with whatever the game gives you via your hand. And since this is a best of 1, and there's no way to really concede resets are going to happen in some of the games. Since you can't buy any more cards, you're just set with whatever the game gives you after putting in a lot of passwords. And deck edits will take time.
キラードール弱点で倒すこともしづらいので、除去カードを使ってなんとかするか、魔法剣士ネオ以上の攻撃力1700を上回るモンスターを出すか、あるいはもう諦めてリセットするかの3択になってしまうんで、できれば相手の場にモンスター残したくないですけど、こうなっちゃうんですよね。で、ロックボス使われて、リリースで出てきて、キラードルですね。そう、これが厄介なんですよ。
Like I said, you can start to see just like how the timing can change or something like that when you have to play around what the game gives you. This is actually mitigated later on of some of the later games where you actually have the ability to concede a game and get back to playing again. And that would change immediately with 5, where you, because it was focusing more on the trading card game rules itself, you could concede a lot faster.
左のユさんがパンドラ戦1戦目で、アルスさんがシズ戦の5戦目ということで、ちょうどまた1戦分の差がついてるところですね。まだまだこれひっくり返る可能性あり得るんで、皆さん最後まで注目していただければです。パンドラで幻想魔族のモンスター以外は全て守備力800以下なんで、 攻撃力900のモンスターは幻想魔族以外のモンスターに勝てます。でさらに攻撃力も下級モンスターに関しては800が最大なのでそこまで怖くはないです。なのでとにかく幻想魔族のモンスターで攻撃を止められたり死者蘇生でいきなりリリース要因を出してきたりそういうことがなければとにかくなんとかなるんで、幸い除去カードも大嵐1枚しかないので激流走とかないのでトラップカードを警戒する必要がないのは安心ですね。なのでとにもかくにも幻想魔族のモンスターを速やかに倒していきたいんですが今ねアンテッドウォリアーが出てますね。この悪魔族のモンスターこれかなり優秀です。なんてかと言いますとさっき申し上げました通り、守備力は、悪魔魔族の幻想魔族以外のモンスターは全て800以下で、かつで守備力900のモンスターはどちらも幻想魔族なんで、属性的で悪魔魔族は有利で悪魔魔族のモンスター一方的に勝つことができます。なので、攻撃力900以上の悪魔魔族がいれば、全ての下級モンスターを倒すことができます。具体的にはね、マトーズ、邪竜あたりがいればね、一方的にこの守備表示になってるモンスター、問答無で倒せるんで、そういう状況になってはありがたいんですが、ちょっと今ね、これかなり苦しい状況ですね。6号戦、もともとパラメータ低いからそれいいんですけど、そうですね、激流倒しまして、で、融合素材が、一応、白ヒーロー作れるけど、どうでしょう。難しいですね、これね。一応、魔法消しネオを作れます。で、最悪、ここ相手、風魔族のモンスターはいないので、で、アルスさんがちょうど今ね、無事に異臭戦突破しまして、これから賛同戦になってきます。そのタイミングでの大嵐は困りますね。もう唯一の除去カードを最高のタイミングで使ってきました。でこれで怖いのは死者蘇生を使われるとこちらの場のね一番強かったモンスター奪われてしまうというとんでもコンボをされることがあります。一応遊戯でもこれできるんですけど相手の方が基本的に除去カード入れてる枚数多いのでこれを見る回数はこちらよりも相手が使ってくる方が圧倒的に多いです。時の魔人ねですね。この時の魔人ネクロダンサー8文字までしか書いないせいで時の魔人ねってなかなか可愛らしいことになってますね。死者蘇生これは誰だっけ。
リジョ
ンジリースリジョンですねこれ。そうですねこれはもうで今アルスさんがパンドラ戦の1戦目に入ってます。
Like I said, you can start to see like why the estimate was the way it was because of having to be able to play good and get the cards you need. You can take advantage of everything the game gives you, but if the game does not give you the cards you need, then you really can't, speed things up.
さまよえる亡者という悪魔族のモンスターもいますんで、幻想魔族は悪魔族で負けまして、で森魔族はね炎魔族で負けるんで、牛折りとかさまよえるで
Also,
厄介なんですが、ちょっと
speaking of artwork changes.
唯一デッキに1枚しかパンドラ入れてないブラックペンダントを使われてしまってネクロランサー
You can also see just like how the names have changed alongside other things, which is why you have a card like Black Magician, Dark Magician being changed from black to dark because of the whole, we don't want to basically reference certain things, dark magic, black magic, that kind of stuff.
最終盤に来ていよいよこのねもう今アルスさんとユウさんほぼほぼ横並びです。素晴らしい。これもうまだまだ最後までどうなるか分かりませんので皆さん注目とお祈りの方よろしくお願い申し上げます。でも激流走を伏せられましたんで何かあっても1回は大丈夫なんで OK ですね。攻撃されましてでこの後モンスターよと生贄に捧げて黒煙弾ネーブレッドアイズ偉いですね。先ほど説明しました通り悪魔魔族のモンスターかなり強いんですよ。ここ
Getting through very quickly on that one there, which is very nice.
白魔族をデッキに1枚も入れていませんのでこのレッドアイズ出てきましたらもうあとは大嵐以外で負けることはないです。なので大嵐を使う前に使われる前にここで決着をつけてしまいたい。どうでしょう。いいですね。モンスターが来ればもう大嵐は絶対ないのでもうマジックカードのターンも最初に使ってくるんで OK です
Also, you do have to appreciate a lot of the art again.
黒煙弾ということで
Red Eyes, that one there, the classic artwork of it.
ユウさんが一歩先に来てリードです。で
Blue Eyes brings victory, but Red Eyes brings potential was the line to describe Red Eyes when it was first revealed in the original first Yu-Gi-Oh movie. The very first movie was being a half an hour long sort of TV special that was done in combination with a few other things for the card game, sort of like when Konami took over the card game, as before then Bandai Namco was in charge of it, and it was a completely different game. Although shoutouts to, I believe it was Duel Monsters 2, Dark Duel Stories, actually causing a very famous riot in Japan back in 1999
キャラクター選択画面でめ
over the very first premium pack and trying to get the head of Exodia.
いいことなんですが、こんだけね、イベントで大活躍できたら、そう楽しくもなるよなって話なんですよね。で、こうダークアイズ
Because apparently Konami did not think there would be enough people that surely them only having one spot in Tokyo Dome where you could buy the card via the pack and not having a lot of packs, surely there wouldn't be enough people to possibly cause a riot there. Turns out when you outright have more people come in that could be there and you only have one person actually working the booth, especially if it's a card tournament, probably not a good idea. Especially when they also built it as this is the only way you're going to be able to get the head of Exodia for a while. And that was its first printing. One of the other fun little Yu-Gi-Oh! Facts. Also that the original name for Duel Monsters was Magic and Wizards. No, Wizards and Monsters, I believe, or that one there. And the Wizards part was being a reference to Wizards of the Coast, the people that made Magic the Gathering.
岩野選手と方形シネオというかなり強い場面を作っています。これ、アルスさんの巧みな技術が光りますね。で、あとはもうこんな感じで、ユさんがちょっと今4戦目に入ってまして、アルスさんも3戦目、今のところ順調ですね。で今ね、ちょっとパンドラが喋っていました。あなたは私のショーを楽しんでくれるたった一人の観客っていうセリフ、これ原作のセリフを取ってきます。他のデュエリストも原作のセリフを取ってきているのがかなり多いですので、皆さんもぜひね、原作をお持ちの方いらっしゃいましたら、このセリフどこで使われたっけなって見比べていただけると嬉しいです。で、死者の腕ですね。この死者の腕は、相手の場の攻撃力が一番高いモンスターと自分の死者の腕を道連れにして破壊することができる、いわば疑似的な除去カードとして使うことができますので、除去カードの選択肢はかなり少ない遊戯デッキではかなり重宝します。でこんな感じで、攻撃力600と最低限の火力があり、属性的にも優秀なんで、場合によっては攻撃をしていくことがありますね。で、レディー DX で攻撃をしてきまして、これはもうアルスさんも4戦目、3戦目終了して4戦目に入ってきますね。ここでまた並んできました。で、命の砂時計を使って、ユさんの方はもうヤマタノドラゴンを攻撃して、バルキリー2300ですね。これ悪魔魔族のモンスターは、いますが、で有利取ることはできるんですが、黒魔族のモンスター来ると困るんですが、そうですね。結構さっき説明しました通り、パンドラ結構黒魔族のモンスターが多いので、サターナとかね、ネブリゴとかね、闇に従うものとか、そこら辺出てきてしまうと、もう白魔族のモンスター、命の砂時計もそうし、バルキリーを負けてしまうので、そこら辺はもう致し方ないって感じですね。とにかく火力を出して、相手のライフを早く削っていきたいというところでした。レオ軍出しまして、これレオ軍1750とね、魔法剣士ネオにギリギリ勝てるので、一瞬戦で魔法剣士ネオ立てられても勝てまして、キラードールが出てきても勝てるということで、ユさんがね、ユさんは採用してないんですけど、アルスさんはね、採用してなかなかで、使い勝手のいいモンスターになります。で、ちょうど今ね、5戦目に終わりましたんで、パンドラ5戦目終了ということで、ユさんが、パンドラ5戦目ですよ。
次5戦目ですね。
すみません。ユさんがパンドラ5戦目入りまして、これ終わりましたらいよいよステージ2のね、難敵たちを突破して、ラストのね、デュエリストのところに戦っていくことになります。初手はそうですね、とりあえず岩の戦士作れまして、でダンシングルーフ捨てておいて様子見ですね。森魔族に風魔族はいないので、これ、基本的にこの勝つことはできないですけど、ここであえて最初に弱いモンスター出しておくことで、大嵐が出てくるときに、そんな強くないモンスターを犠牲にして、ね、その後もっと強いモンスターを立てるということもできるんで、結構ね、初手の先行で、あんまり強くないモンスターを守備表示にしておくっていうのは、この除去カードがある場合は有効ですね。デビルドラゴン、このデビルドラゴンちょっと説明遅れてましたが、ドラゴン族のモンスターとデビルって感じで闇のモンスターとかね、ゾンビ、アンデッドのモンスターとか融合して作れて、攻撃力1500とそこそこ優秀なんで、ストーンドラゴン作れない場合の案としてはかなり優秀です。で、これで無事にね、アルスさんも4戦目終了して5戦目に入っていきます。まだまだ僅差です。さて、まだまだどうなるか分かりません。全く分かりません。これで岩の選手をね、作っておきまして。
間違えました。
ここはあれなんですよね、パンドラは、トラップカード一番上ないので、トラップカードを破壊するハーピーの羽ぼうきを使う必要ないですが、ご愛嬌ということで、改めてね、このまま戦っていきまして、岩の選手立てられてますんで、もう変なタイミングで除去カードとかね、なんか六芒星とか使われなければ、おおむね大丈夫かなって、異国の剣士を攻撃表示にして攻撃をすることによって、相手の攻撃を誘発することができますんで、そのままね、こちらの場で結構強いモンスター2羽いますんで、片方ね、そうですね、そういうことを考えていたんですけど、このように結構、幻想魔族がやっぱり6枚相手の敵に入っておりますんで、そこら辺がどうしてもね、こういう感じで牙を向いてしまうこともあります。次は異国の剣士を殴ってくれると嬉しいんですが、どうでしょう。 まあそうですね、支援の影武者は、こちらが森魔族の強いモンスター立てられてなければ、こんな感じでなんてことなく勝てるんで OK ですね。で、アルスさん、右のアルスさんの方は、いいですね、これでキラードールを奪いました。で、今ね、
Oh, to enter chat, sorry. We're along the lines of just like writing something on that one there. And did not want to actually do stuff on that one. And to answer the other question, duels wise, they are working their way through the second screen and they have to win each of them 5 times. Oh, wait, I'm wrong. Looks like someone's on Pegasus already to screen 3. So 5 times winning Pegasus on that one there. Left at least for you side.
で、車族のモンスターを敵に入れていきまして、アルスさんの方は問題なく、そうですね、キラードールと魔法剣士ネオのね、2トップで攻撃を仕掛けています。で、いよいよ、で、左のユさんがもう、最終戦に入ってきました。車族のモンスターいますね。なんで車族のモンスター入れまったかと言いますと、ペガサス、攻撃力1000とか1100のね、かなり強い下級モンスター、そう、ホロぐらいは強化されましたね。この、シャインキャス、ブラックマジックで、ブラックマジックで、ブラックマリシャン使いとパンドラに格の違う遊戯が見せつけました。素晴らしい。
これが遊戯です。
美しい勝ち方で無事にですね、ペガサス戦に入っていきます。
And yeah, so it's 5 times each duelist on that one there. And looks like the first one, Pegasus J. Cross for you. Maximilian Pegasus on that one. Pegasus on that one. Both of them doing very well on that one time-wise. I'm guessing 15 minutes at most on that one there, which is very good considering they had to reset out of some of the stuff. And they built their deck to take advantage of some stuff. Sending out red eyes on that one there. You probably won't see a PB or world record, but you will see both of them doing an amazing showcase of the game in and of itself, which is actually very good.
ペガサスの代名詞であるサクリファイスとサウザンドアイサクリファイスです。この激流層も厄介なんですけど、黒煙弾。ただこの
sacrificing out on that one there, summoning stuff, just trying to get done the damage as much as possible. And you can see immediately just how quick the table can turn and how quick you can just start, catching up on that one there. A Yu-Gi-Oh! Speedrun is more about winning overall as an average. Like, you could get a great opening and then get mired down in a slog for the mid-game to finally come back and make up some time at the end.
死者蘇生使われていて、サクリファイスで、サクリファイスについて後で説明しましょうね。相手の場の攻撃力の一番高いモンスター1体のコントロールを得るのがサクリファイスで、相手の場の攻撃力の一番高いモンスターを奪った上で攻撃力、守備力ともにプラス1000してくるのが
Yeah, I'd say sub hour and 50 minutes most likely. Which is very good on that one there. Considering my average for like I'll reference 7 trials here because that's the one I speedrun. I'd say my fastest in practice has been slightly over 2 hours and 25 minutes, but my average on stream is around like a 140ish, with me needing to highlight a new world record at 140. Sorry, not 140, at 241. But that's because you can see just like the variation in that one. So you're trying to play as best as you can in a game like this. You're trying to play as best as you can, make quick decisions, not mess up your menuing to some degree or not mash too quickly in case you do make a mistake or something like that. That is one of the benefits of the early days collection, that you can rewind, but every duelist worth their salt is not going to use that one. However, it is good for practicing. But it's like, it's got a lot of other little things, and sometimes you will even notice variations between the games. Like, for example, in I'll reference so much else again. Like, there is a save screen that you see in the English version, and it doesn't save as often, which allows for resetting. Whereas in the Japanese version, Duel Monsters International 2, it saves a bit more often, but there's no save screen with auto-saving. So, there are differences between each version.
幻想魔族のこちらもずっと使ってきたダークアイズイードリスト、そして洗顔の邪教神、さらにタインボマーというね。
And yes, point out chat, Nightmare Troubadour is one of the better, good old school games for the DS. It's sort of like the culmination of like some of the stuff like that one. The biggest drawback is that it's very slow, and it's a game that I hope if they do make a DS collection for the games, they actually do add a speed up function or the ability to skip text in that one, because that one one is very slow and a bit more grindy, but you have the ability to buy packs, which that was added in, well, let's see, Dungeon Dice Monsters, you could buy the cards, and you could buy the pieces in and of itself. They added that to Sacred Cards as well, but I'd say the first one where you could buy packs was probably 7 Trials. As far as this game goes, like I said before, the gameplay was altered in the very next game of 5, which is when you started to actually have the official TCG stuff in there. But for this, you will still see stuff like this, you know, later on in Sacred Cards and Chef of Destruction, which is essentially a successor to this style of gameplay.
勝てます。サクリファイスを使われてもこんな感じでデュエリストの力量が光るという点でもこのペガサス戦なかなか楽しいですね。まあというのでこんな感じで状況としましては
You can see them playing as fast as they can, using effects when they can, fusioning still. Vegas is saying, you know, did good, Yugi boy. I still love the fact that there is actually a card out there called Kaiba Man, which is basically instead of Kaiba dressed up with the helmet or not one there. So Chad, I do have to ask, what's your favorite old school Yu-Gi-Oh card? So stop defense being used, but Renegade actually having the monster kill.
普通マーメイドは黒魔族のモンスターなので幻想魔族で勝つことができるんですけど、今相手守備表示
killing, going like that. Monster dies. Taking advantage of that alignment system. Although you won't see them actually use the guide cards, because sadly you don't get to unlock them until other stuff. I believe that was some of the faith that you just saw, with some of the more interesting artwork. I wish that they would actually print some of these alt arts in the game, but at the same point, Pegasus there, gets the card from there. Still has to beat Pegasus, I think, 2 more times. And you see, that's on your side. You see the other side of stuff going from there. He resettled that one there. He said, are we going into the password or... Nope, having to still beat Pegasus, so it is still a very close race. It's still a very, very close race, with either of them being able to win. And remember, this is a race between different versions of the game, which is normally one of the interesting things is each version is tracked separately, as I said, way back at the start.
いきなりサンダーボルトを使われましたが、それを見越してね、強くないモンスターをバリ出していたんで OK ですね。ここは黒魔族のモンスターが強いということは
Yes, Dice Jar, good old Dice Jar, strat.
そういうことも有効です。で、今アルスさんが4戦目に入っていきまして、で、今ユウさんがちょうど4戦目ということで、
I do have to say, manipulating the odds in these types of games are always fun to see. It's why, if you really want to see a very, very, very highly manipulated route, I recommend the Sacred Cards. The RNG is a lot more manipulatable, up down to the being able to even manipulate what your opening hand is going to be. And one of the most interesting things with that one is the win condition for the speedrun for that is it manipulates a Destiny board in your opening hand. So the speedrun evolves into I Final Destiny, I play Destiny board, you know, FINAL in a single turn, and that's why that game could be beaten in under half an hour. You want to see one of the fastest glitzless Yu-Gi-Oh runs there? Well, technically not counting Enter Konami Code C credits run. Ooh, having to reset again on your side. It's getting very close now. Getting very, very close. Makes this being tough. I mean, he is the creator of the game, at least in lore-wise. Although, again, I also recommend looking up the manga at some point. For those that have ever seen some of the manga artwork and some of the manga storylines, that in Season 0. They're on YouTube, at least for Season 0. And then for the other one, you can probably find it online somewhere. But yes, like the franchise as a whole has had a lot of different things is going for a lot of the stuff. So the creature controlling in the attic, that is not Karibo. That is the creature controlling in the attic, and you're seeing a Dark Magician summon.
なかなか面白いですね。スピラスレディを守備表示にして、でこれでちょっとね、サンドイッチを作る。
As that was part of the actual donation sentiment alongside which version was that they would use the Dark Magician and Red Eyes, the partner cards, or the iconic cards, on that one there. Although technically Joey was not the original owner of the Red Eyes, that was Rex in the anime. Technically not the first appearance on that one there, but it's still. Black Magic Attack. That's when you hear them actually saying that outright. That there. An alligator. Still, like, I think they're both just about on the final duels for each. So they're both doing it. No, very good. We're getting close to that one. Hourglass of Courage. There was Hourglass of Courage in Secret Cards, which allowed you to double its attack, if I recall. Pegasus. Let's see here. Was that a... Just to beat Pegasus one more time, I think, at the bare minimum. There was Witch of the Black Forest, original art. One of the cards that hasn't been printed yet. Yep, there's Witch. First, Monster Eye. Forest using a fusion there, I believe. パロトラで相当のサンダードラゴン、土島族のモンスターパイプリワスはまあ効果絶対これ発動するんで、苦しいで、アルスユさんの方も最終戦入ってきました。ここどうなるの？まだ最後のところで全くわからない。Unhappy Maiden. で相当のサンダードラゴンを超えるデザイン攻撃。Ironically, I can name the cards by seeing the artwork for a lot of the stuff. Comes from actually playing a lot of the older games. 土島族のモンスター来るよ、お祈りもいない、来ない。これはどうする？まあどうする？祈るしかない。でこれ一応ですね、バニモンスターいっぱい出しておいて何かが起きることを祈ります。でユさんの方は順調に削っている。順調に削っていってでモンスターも攻撃しました。モンスターサクリファイス防いで。Answer chat. Yes, a lot of them did. A lot of the old chats, a lot of the older arts did have a lot of changes. The same thing with names. If you really want to see an example of that one, I think it's either Last Day of the Witch is a good example of how they changed things, or Tragedy. Just to show like how different the artworks changed on that one there. Just how much censorship some of the stuff on that one there. Last Day of the Witch. English art is a, well, TCG art is legitimately a cartoonist witch with a no smoking sign, thing for there. The OCG art is literally someone just about to be burned at the stake. So that should just show just like the differences in like card art style stuff between the two areas during that time frame of when some of those cards were printed. Getting close, near the Magic Swordsman's out. Pegasus, is that a fifth win? I'd have to see. I think Pegasus is saying a lot more. Is probably saying that's close to that one there. Yep, gets the unlock Merrick, but doesn't need to do that one because now I entered the password, so just about time for you. Is entering the credits password in right now, so they just finished. As you unlock the ability to fight Yami Merrick, but you have to unlock the ability to get to that, and in order to battle Yami Merrick, you have to do some shenanigans with trading and other stuff like that for some of the extra stuff. So GG's in chat for our first winner, and I think, yep, our other runner is just about to finish up as well, I believe. So not bad. Yep. Yugi unlocking Yami Yugi. And just enter in the password as well, so get ready for your GG's in chat for the second one as well. And GG's to both of our runners. And an amazing run.
That was a close race.
Considering the RNG for each and all the having to reset out of that one, agreed. But you can also see just like the variation between stuff like that and just having to deal with things.
かなり本当緊張した中でパスワード間違えてしまったり
Because sometimes when the game says no, it can get to be pretty bad. But when the game does, it does good.
もやっぱいかないことが多くて、これがこのゲームの醍醐味だったりもするんですけど。
Yeah, runs like this, it gets hairy really fast if things don't go right.
Especially in the older games where you don't have the ability to do as much consistency, or when you only have one copy of certain cards. Which is one of the positive notes about some of the later games is it's a lot easier to get a hold of some of the cards. And even though you might have to pay for passwords, it's just like, oh, I've got extra copies of a card. I can start playing more consistent. I mean, unlike Forbidden Memories where you can just keep dumping your hand away, you have to actually take advantage of some things and, have to play, draw one card each turn. So GG's again to both of our runners. Amazing showcase of the game and an amazing, showcase of just how fun some of the older games can be.
Yeah, absolutely. GG's to both. And GG's to you. Thank you for commentating with us. Do you have any shoutouts of your own? And where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Magus1 on Twitch. If you want to check out or see some of the older, or at least one of the older Yu-Gi-Oh games with 7 trials, I've got quite a few videos on that one, and I'm working on that I need to update for the speedrun to that one, as that is an interesting one. It's essentially it is the second fastest older game with the TCG because worldwide edition basically just beat the limited tournaments and has password system that's free, but 7 trials you don't have that. You don't have the ability to get unlimited passwords, but you have the ability to buy decks and packs. But as far as other stuff, you can find me like all over the place. I speedrun a lot of different things. Shoutouts to the Yu-Gi-Oh speedrun community because many of us, speedrun a lot of the other games apart from Forbidden Memories and Duels of the Roses. But there are still some of us out there, and there's a lot of interesting things with that. I guess shoutouts again for giving me the opportunity to provide some commentary on an amazing game and help showcase how some of the older Yu-Gi-Oh games can be quite fun to watch and speedrun.
Yeah, thank you for being here. This run was more enjoyable for you being here. Otherwise, I would not have understood a single thing that was going on.
In all honesty, it's like a lot of the games are a lot easier to pick up and learn, even without having to know the card game rules. It's more about like rooting on the fly and dealing with randomness sometimes. So it's more of like a little bit of a randomizer, a little bit of knowing how to do memory, menuing to some degree, and just being able to adapt.
Mm-hmm. はい、ということで皆様も遊戯王 DM4 遊んでみていただきたいなと思います。では続きましてですね、次の欄はペルソナ。
It said in chat, like, do you have to reset out of some of the games, and considering that when you have the ability to surrender, you'll see that, or you have to consider how much can I, you have to literally think of the time loss to do that versus that can I win faster than what it would be from starting from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So again, thanks for having me. I think the crowd enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like the setup stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sticking around for the roughly an hour of setup that we had to do. So.
Okay, in all fairness, that just meant something for the when you can selectively decide if not you want to keep any of that one into the VOD.
Yeah. All right. With that has been Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 Battle of Great Duelists, any %. And we have more RTA in Japan coming up. We have Persona 4 Golden coming up next. So we're going to go to break on the restream as well. This is English Speedrun Restreams and our English restream of RTA in Japan Winter 2025. Please go take a break because next up, this one's a long one. About 9 hours of that game. So sit tight. We'll be back shortly.